Guyen, get out of this conference room right now. Lin Mange's voice wasn't loud, even carrying a hint of languor, as if she had just woken up. But her words struck like a nail, precisely hitting the eardrums of everyone present. She didn't look at me. Her slender fingers casually fiddled with the still wet ink of the resolution of the extraordinary shareholders meeting in front of her, the scarlet on her nails resembling dried blood in the cold light. 8 pairs of eyes, representing the company's 8 core shareholders, stared intently at my face. There was sympathy, but more so a cold indifference, as if it were none of my business. Some of them were people I had promoted from the bottom, but now they kept their heads bowed, like spineless, effeminate figures whose wood grain had suddenly become incredibly alluring. I looked at her, my wife, the CEO of Xingman Technology, an industry leader with a market capitalization of hundreds of billions. 3 days ago, she was still in my arms, saying in her usual coquettish, commanding tone, "Honey, don't interrupt the morning meeting next Monday. Let me host it for once. I want to try it out." I smiled then, ruffled her carefully maintained long hair, and didn't say anything. Now I understand. What she wanted wasn't just to try it out, but my position, me as a person, to be completely stripped away from this massive machine I built from scratch. The reason? I spoke, my voice surprisingly calm even to myself. Reason? Lin Mange finally raised her head, her flawlessly beautiful face filled with undisguised contempt, as if she had seen something filthy. Guyen, do you have any shame? She thought. The company's growth has slowed for 2 consecutive quarters. The market feedback on the newly developed Sky Eye system is lukewarm, and our de-investment is like a bottomless pit. As chairman and CTO, you are largely to blame. More importantly, the extraordinary shareholders meeting has resolved that your management philosophy is outdated and has seriously hindered the company's development, making you unsuitable for any core position. These 8 shareholders, holding a combined 67.4% stake, have enough power to get rid of you on any resolution. Sign it, take your severance pay, and get as far away as possible. Don't dirty the carpet here. She tossed a Mont Blanc pen in front of me. The pen struck the bone china teacup with a sharp, jarring sound. I mentally calculated the time. It was 9:10 a.m. Pre-market trading should have begun on the other side of the ocean in the U.S. stock market. I didn't touch the pen. Instead, I relaxed, leaning back in the soft leather chair, my hands folded in my lap, my gaze scanning the 8 shareholders like a scanner. Mr. Wang, Mr. Li, Chairman Zhao, are you sure you want to sign this? Are you sure you want to follow her and kick me out? My gaze finally settled on the bald Wang Zhiming. Mr. Wang, have you forgotten last year's technology crisis? Who stayed up for 3 days and 3 nights to fill that hole for you? When you brought me in as a shareholder, you knelt on the ground and called me your benefactor. Wang Zhiming's face stiffened. Then he became furious. He's my cousin's college classmate. I was the one who pushed through the opposition to get him on the board. Guyen, don't push your luck. Times have changed. The business world is like a battlefield. The winner takes all. Mange is right. The company needs a fresh start. Fresh blood. You've been living off your past achievements all these years. Sign it. Let's part amicably. It'll save face for everyone. Living off past glories? I repeated those 3 words softly, a faint, almost mocking smile playing on my lips. This company, from a single line of code, a business plan scribbled on a napkin, was the result of countless sleepless nights, the mortgage of my wedding home, and the begging of investors for the first round of angel investment. And now, they're telling me I'm living off past glories? These blood-sucking leeches have forgotten who first injected nutrients into their veins. Lin Mange waved her hand impatiently, like shooing away a buzzing fly. Why waste words with him? The procedure was legal and compliant. The voting rights were there. He couldn't deny it. Guyen, don't force me to use harsher methods. Think of your parents' meager pensions back home, and your sister's visa sponsorship for studying abroad. Sign obediently, and everything will be fine. Otherwise, she didn't finish, but the threat in her unfinished words was colder than any open attack. I nodded, as if I understood her kind reminder. I took my phone out of the pocket of my custom-made suit and lightly pressed the side button with my fingertip. A preset program quietly started. Then, I turned the phone screen towards them. It displayed an encrypted real-time market data software interface. Before we started discussing terms, I looked at Lin Mange and said, word by word, in a low but clear voice, Shouldn't you take a look at what happened in the kingdom you're about to take over in the very minute that you just announced my dismissal? Lin Mange frowned, subconsciously glancing at the expensive laptop screen in front of her. Almost simultaneously, all the shareholders' phones in the conference room began vibrating wildly, the constant buzzing and exclamations instantly replacing the previous feigned silence. What happened? Why did the stock price plummet? Was it halted due to a circuit breaker? Massive transaction. Who's frantically selling? It's our own shares. Who has such a large position? A market value of tens of billions. Gone in the blink of an eye. How is this possible? Was there a system malfunction? The red, plummeting figures, like a burst dam, washed over every screen. Panic spread like a plague. The shareholders, who had been so arrogant just moments before, were now pale-faced, frantically dialing their phones and shouting incoherently. Fine beads of sweat appeared on Wang Zhiming's bald head, and Chairman Zhao's dentures seemed to be trembling. Lin Mange abruptly looked up, staring intently at me. For the first time, genuine fear appeared in her beautiful almond-shaped eyes, replacing her previous arrogance. It was you? Gu Yan. You did it? Are you insane? Your fortune was in there. This is suicide. My entire fortune? I stood up, slowly straightening my perfectly wrinkle-free cuffs, ignoring the surrounding chaos as if the gasps were just background noise. Lin Mange, from the moment you picked up the pen, ready to sign your name on that resolution, it ceased to be my fortune. You like power, don't you? Now, the entire mess of the company, completely and without reservation, belongs to you. I stepped forward, reached for the resolution on the table, tore it gently, then overlapped the two halves and tore it again. The sturdy paper groaned under my hands, scraps of paper falling like snowflakes into the still steaming cup of black tea in front of her. Also, let me correct you on one point. It's not that I'm crazy. It's that you're too stupid. Stupid enough to think that having the key means you can open a treasure vault. You think you've got control? No, what you've got is something I carefully packaged and personally handed to you. A bomb strapped with a countdown timer. After saying that, I turned and walked away, my steps steady, without a trace of lingering regret. Behind me came Lin Mange's hysterical screams, the sound of something being violently swept to the ground and shattering, and the shareholders panicked, questioning and shouting at each other. But I didn't turn back. I'd had enough of this charade. Stepping out of the building, the early winter wind carried a biting chill, swirling up fallen leaves. I took a deep breath of the icy air, and my muddled mind cleared considerably. I took out another encrypted phone, one I had never used in public before. Hey, Lao Chun. Step 1 complete. Release the second phase of information as planned. Yes, that's it. Let all mainstream financial media know immediately that Ms. Lin Mange, on her first day as CEO, caused the largest single-day market capitalization loss in the company's history, with the source pointing to a concentrated sell-off by the company's core management. Also, contact the stock exchange. I need to request a special shareholders meeting. The reason? Just state a serious lack of trust in the current management and suspected violations leading to a huge loss of state-owned assets. My speech was steady, and the instructions were clear and unambiguous. Old Chin's calm reply came from the other end of the phone. Understood. Mr. Gu, the news has been released, and public opinion has begun to ferment. The relationships with the exchange have been smoothed over, and the application for the special shareholders meeting is being expedited. Also, the portal you requested has been closed as planned. Very well. I hung up the phone, looked up at the city's gray sky, the leaden clouds hanging low, oppressive and suffocating. But this was exactly the weather I needed. The game had only just begun, and on the chessboard, I had already moved the most crucial piece. Lin Mange, you will soon find out that when you thought you had me under your feet, you were actually standing on the edge of a cliff I had carefully chosen for you. And I was below, waiting to catch your piercing, desperate echo as you fell. Less than 10 minutes later, an even more intense commotion erupted in the building. Lin Mange had actually chased after them, her high heels clicking rapidly and erratically on the polished marble floor, like the pounding of a dying heart. Her hair was disheveled, and her exquisite makeup was smudged by tears, revealing a pale complexion beneath. She was a far cry from the arrogant queen she had been in the conference room moments before. She grabbed my arm with surprising force, her perfectly manicured nails digging almost into my flesh, causing a sharp, stinging pain. Guyen, stop right there. Stop right there. Her voice was hoarse, trembling with tears. But more than anything, it was an incredulous, deep-seated fear. What have you done? That 10 billion. Was that 10 billion simply evaporated from the books? Why are all my internal accounts showing abnormalities? Why are all the fund transfer interfaces locked? You tampered with it. You planned this all along, didn't you? Speak up, you madman. I stopped and looked down at her hand gripping my arm. Her fingernails were even dusty from her earlier excitement. Then, I slowly raised my eyes to meet hers, bloodshot eyes, devoid of any former arrogance. I gently brushed her hand away, the movement as elegant as dusting off a stray speck, even taking out a silk handkerchief to wipe the spot she had touched. President Lin, I deliberately used this cold and distant form of address. Please mind your manners. Now, you should address me as former chairman. As for that 10 billion, I leaned close to her ear and, in a voice only the two of us could hear, said, word by word, that's just interest. It's the price you pay for messing with my company and my hard work. We'll settle this slowly. From your secret account hidden in the Cayman Islands, which I almost managed to keep in the dark, to the Shishan villa you quietly transferred to your brother Lin Feng's name last month, supposedly premarital property, and then to the man wearing a baseball cap who hurriedly left at the end of the VIP corridor in the hospital on the day your son was born. Every word was like a heavy hammer blow, striking Lin Mange's heart. Her face instantly turned deathly pale. Her hand gripping mine fell limply to her sides, and she swayed precariously, as if her spine had been ripped away. Her lips trembled, trying to speak, but only broken, breathy sounds escaped her lips. Her eyes, which always gleamed with calculation, were now filled with a blank, terror-stricken look. She understood. She fully understood the weight of that last sentence. It wasn't just a business blow. It struck at her most hidden, most vulnerable spot. I ignored her suddenly limp body and walked towards the black Mulsanne that had been waiting quietly by the roadside. Before getting in, I glanced back at Lin Mange, who was still standing there as if her soul had been ripped away, and at the shareholders peeking out of the building entrance, their faces filled with panic and disbelief. They were like a swarm of bees that had lost their queen, buzzing around, not knowing where to fly. The driver, Lao Zhang, glanced at me through the rearview mirror and asked softly, "Sir, where to?" I fastened my seatbelt, my gaze sweeping past the rapidly receding streetscape outside the window. The familiar bustle now seemed so alien. Home, grab a document, then meet our new partner. I paused, a cold smile playing on my lips. And, incidentally, prepare a grand gift for Ms. Lin. Doesn't she love meetings? Love giving orders in front of everyone? Soon, I'll arrange a globally oriented sharing session for her, a session she'll never forget. The engine roared deep and powerfully as the car smoothly merged into the traffic. In the rearview mirror, the starry sky building, a symbol of power and wealth, now resembled a lone boat in a storm, receded into the distance. And I knew the real storm had only just begun. Lin Mange, I've accepted all your madness and greed. Now, it's my turn to teach you what true rules are, and what the consequences are. This farce you started will have its ending written by my own hand, and you will be its most painful cautionary tale. The car drove out of the city, heading towards the villa on the outskirts of the city that we shared, yet had long since drifted apart. Along the way, old Zhang didn't say much, only occasionally stealing glances at me in the rearview mirror. I knew what he was thinking. He had been with me for many years, seeing me in my prime, and seeing me haggard late at night. But he had never seen me like this before, eerily calm, yet with a cold flame burning deep within my eyes, a flame capable of destroying everything. As we approached the villa, my phone vibrated again. It was an encrypted message from Lao Chun. The first phase of the public opinion storm has begun, with topics like Xingmon Technology's billions in losses evaporating and the new CEO Lin Mange's disastrous debut topping the trending searches. Multiple institutions have downgraded their ratings to sell. The Lin siblings have urgently contacted major banks for credit, but all requests have been suspended due to ownership disputes over the collateral. Also, the gift you requested has been prepared. I stared at the words property rights dispute on the screen, my fingertips lightly tapping on the cold surface. Lin Mange thought she had gotten away with the villa in Shishan flawlessly. unaware that I had already archived and compared the subtle angle of the signature on the crucial document her brother Lin Feng used when transferring assets. This was just the beginning, a small appetizer. Back at the villa, the air was so thick I could hear echoes. I'd already dismissed the servants. I went straight to the study and opened the hidden safe that only my fingerprint could unlock. Inside, besides some important legal documents and asset certificates, was a thin manila envelope. I picked it up, feeling its weight. Inside were details of how Lin Mange, over the past 3 years, had used her CEO powers to transfer the company's core profits to subsidiaries she controlled through complex related party transactions, how she forged contracts, falsified accounts, and even photos and recordings of her secret meetings with executives from rival companies. Of course, most importantly, there's the copy of the DNA test report, and also a photocopy of my son's real birth certificate, where the mother's name isn't Lin Mange. I put the file folder into my briefcase and locked the safe. As I turned around, I caught a glimpse of our wedding photo on the bookshelf. In the picture, Lin Mange was smiling brightly, nestled in my arms. Was that smile genuine? Perhaps, but more than anything, it probably reflected her covetousness for the resources I held, and her longing for everything that the title of Mrs. Gu would bring. How ironic. I picked up the photo frame, gently placed it on the table, and then took out the Zippo lighter from my pocket, a birthday gift she gave me last year, saying it was a limited edition. Click. A flame leaped up, illuminating my expressionless face. I brought the flame close to the edge of the picture frame. The wooden frame quickly charred and burned. I didn't look any longer, turning and leaving the study, letting the flames silently devour that false past behind me. A faint smell of burning filled the air, a smell more sobering than any perfume. Just as he stepped into the living room, the villa's doorbell began ringing frantically, accompanied by the sound of forceful pounding on the door. Gu Yan, open the door. I know you're in there. You coward. You've made such a mess. And you think you can just walk away? It was Lin Mange. Her voice was shrill and inhuman, filled with resentment and panic. I ignored them and headed straight for the garage. The banging and shouting behind me grew louder, even punctuated by the muffled thud of her kicking the door with her high heels. The noise continued to penetrate even after I got into the driver's seat and started the engine. I adjusted the rearview mirror and saw Lin Mange's distorted face appear in front of the second-floor French windows. She was frantically pounding on the glass, her mouth opening and closing like a stranded fish. I shifted gears and slowly drove out of the garage. In the rearview mirror, I saw her turn around in despair, as if she wanted to rush out. But her figure was quickly obscured by the corner of the villa. The car drove onto the main road and merged into the evening traffic. Neon lights gradually lit up, outlining the city's silhouette and illuminating the constantly scrolling financial news on the electronic displays. All of them, without exception, about Xingmon Technology's plummeting stock price and Lin Mange's disheveled state. I took out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't contacted in a long time. Hello, Attorney Lee. It's me, Gu Yan. When will the final ruling on the ownership of the intellectual property rights for the Apocalypse project be issued? Very good. Tomorrow morning? Okay, I'll be there on time. Also, prepare the complaint. The defendant is Ms. Lin Mange and all her affiliated companies. Causes of action? Commercial fraud, embezzlement, and forgery. Yes, I've already compiled the chain of evidence. I'll bring it all tomorrow. I hung up the phone and looked out the car window at this dazzling yet perilous city. Lin Mange, do you think I only lost the title of chairperson? No, what I lost was the last vestige of our ridiculous marital affection. And now, I'm taking back everything that was rightfully mine, including what you took from me, and the price you must pay 1,000-fold for it. Tomorrow's special shareholders meeting will be an even more spectacular performance. And this time, I've written the script. I'm also the director. And you, Lin Mange, will be the most perfect, the most utterly devastating loser under my lens. This grand drama has only just begun, and I can't wait to see your expression when you're at your wit's end. It will certainly be far more exciting than what you saw in the meeting room today. The car moved smoothly towards a secluded private club. Tonight, I would meet with several financial tycoons who had been secretly supporting me. They needed to hear my explanation, but more importantly, they needed to see my next move. and I had enough leverage to convince them that abandoning Lin Mange and choosing me was the only right decision. After all, in this dog-eat-dog world, the real hunter often appears as the prey, and I, Gu Yan, have never been a lamb to the slaughter. Today's retreat is merely a prelude to a more thorough harvest tomorrow. Lin Mange, enjoy your last few hours as CEO. Soon, you will discover that you have not inherited an empire, but a massive, tailor-made grave. Lin Mange burst through the heavy oak door at 2 in the morning. The rattling of the door frame hadn't even faded when she stumbled into the empty living room. Her high heels slammed against the polished marble floor, and the sharp pain in her ankle made her gasp. But it was nothing compared to the tearing chill in her heart. The lights were off. Only the afterglow of the city lights outside the window illuminated the motionless figure on the sofa. His back to her, Gu Yan. He sat there, like a cold sculpture. He held a glass of amber-colored liquor in his hand, and the ice cubes occasionally bumped against the glass, making a faint, crisp sound that seemed particularly jarring in the deathly silence. Gu Yan. Lin Mange's voice was terribly hoarse, nasal from crying and trembling uncontrollably. What did you do to me? Why can't I withdraw any of the money? She scrambled forward, trying to grab his trouser leg, but Gu Yan casually dodged to the side. She missed her target, her elbow hitting the floor, causing her to curl up in pain. Gu Yan slowly turned around. The light from behind outlined his silhouette, obscuring his expression, except for his eyes, which gleamed eerily in the shadows, like a wolf eyeing its prey. Mr. Lin, breaking into a private residence in the middle of the night isn't quite befitting your status, is it? His voice was calm and unwavering, revealing neither joy nor anger. My money, the money in our joint account, and the money in my personal account, it's all frozen. The bank said there's a court order for asset preservation. Gu Yan, it was you, wasn't it? What right do you have? Lin Mange almost screamed. Her exquisite makeup was already ruined, her mascara smudged into a dark mess. She looked utterly disheveled. Our money? Gu Yan chuckled softly. A cold laugh. Lin Mange, besides money and me, what else is on your mind? Do you really think all that money is yours? He pulled a stack of documents from his suit pocket and tossed them onto the floor in front of her. The papers scattered and slid up to her eyes. The top one, with its bright red court seal, stung her eyes, a property preservation ruling. Below were detailed bank statements pointing to several overseas accounts she thought were foolproof, as well as secret accounts she had opened in her own name at several domestic banks, which actually held the company's core working capital. This is impossible, Lin Mange muttered to herself, her fingers trembling as she flipped through the files. These accounts, nobody knows about these. How could you possibly find them? Nobody knows? Gu Yan slowly sipped his drink. Your cousin who works at Credit Suisse has a bad memory. He's prone to letting slip things when he's drunk. And your accountant, the only child in your family, is having some trouble with his student visa. She's really worried. Lin Mange, you never look at loyalty when hiring people, only at price. So, if someone betrays you, it's just because you couldn't agree on the price. Every word felt like a dull knife, tearing at Lin Mange's heart. Suddenly remembering something, she scrambled to her feet and rushed barefoot to the study on the second floor. The safe, the family safe. There was cash there, and the land deed. Gu Yan did not stop her, but simply sat on the sofa, leisurely watching her figure disappear around the corner of the stairs, a cold mockery on his lips. A few seconds later, an even more piercing scream echoed from the study. No, no, this can't be. Who moved my safe? She stumbled back, clutching tightly an open compartment in her personal safe, where she kept her most valuable possessions. But now, it was empty, where 2 million euros in cash and several crucial land deeds had once lay. Now only a small voice recorder and a manila envelope. With trembling hands, she grabbed the recorder and pressed play. The recording played a clear conversation between herself and the accountant, detailing how to falsify accounts to cover up the transfer of company funds. And the envelope, pulled out, contained a notarized copy of a supplementary prenuptial agreement. In July 2019, we signed a supplementary agreement. Article 3, Clause 7. Gu Yan's voice drifted down from downstairs. If either party conceals or transfers marital property or embezzles company assets during the marriage, once verified, The offending party voluntarily relinquishes all marital property and any premarital assets clearly attributed to them within the scope of their company equity, and unconditionally cooperates in the recovery of these assets. Lynn Mange. It's all in black and white. Your signature. Your fingerprint. Do I need to remind you? You set this trap all along. Lynn Mange felt a chill run through her body and slumped to the ground, the recorder and documents slipping from her hands. She remembered the supplementary agreement. She had just become pregnant then, and to appease her and appear generous, Nguyen had produced that agreement, claiming it was to ensure her and her child's future. She hadn't even read it carefully, only glancing at the clauses protecting her interests before signing it with a flourish. She thought it was Nguyen's reassurance, but little did she know. It was a death knell. A trap? Nguyen put down his wine glass, stood up, walked over to her, and looked down at her. Lynn Mange, you were the one who first reached into the company's treasury. You were the one who stabbed your husband in the back. I just dragged the lines you couldn't see right in front of you. Now, every penny you touch is tainted with the red line of the law. Do you think those shareholders, those banks, those wolves eyeing your position will let you go? He crouched down, picked up the supplementary agreement, and waved it in front of her. From the moment you told her to get out of the meeting room this morning, this was all destined to happen. Billions evaporated. This is just the beginning. Now, even the money you need to buy a cup of coffee is charity from me. Lynn Mange completely broke down. She had always thought of herself as the chess player, in control of the entire game. But it turned out she was merely a pawn on Nguyen's chessboard. Her fate predetermined even in terms of when she would be captured. She frantically grabbed at Nguyen's trouser leg, tears streaming down her face. Nguyen, I was wrong. Please, let me go? That money. I can return all that money. We're still husband and wife. For the sake of the children. The child? Nguyen's eyes sharpened, and he abruptly pulled his foot back, frowning in disgust. Don't try to disgust me with that child. You know it, and I know it even better. Do I need to take out that DNA report and put it in front of you right now? Lynn Mange was struck dumb. All the words stuck in her throat, leaving only the clattering of her teeth. Her biggest secret, the one she thought was her safest trump card, was actually in his hands. Nguyen straightened up, adjusted the hem of his suit jacket, and looked at her again. You can sleep here tonight. Tomorrow morning, a lawyer will come to you with documents. Sign them. Leave with nothing, and I can allow you to keep the nightgown you're wearing. Otherwise, he paused, his voice chillingly cold. Otherwise, the prison gates will be wide open for you tomorrow. Choose. With that, he turned and walked towards the door without looking back. Lynn Mange let out a wild howl behind him, but could no longer grasp even a scrap of his clothing. The door closed softly, isolating her in this empty, cold tomb that would soon no longer belong to her. She curled up on the cold floor, surrounded by scattered documents and the empty safe compartment, finally understanding that she had lost not only money and status, but her entire life. Nguyen didn't even glance at her again, because he knew the real hunt had only just begun. The white glove who had handled all the dirty work for her was about to turn against her. The morning sunlight streamed through the gaps in the slightly ajar curtains, piercing Lynn Mange's swollen eyes. She remained curled up on the floor, motionless, until a frantic doorbell rang like a drill, slamming into her ears. She jolted awake, her heart pounding. Memories of the previous night flooded back, bringing a suffocating despair. The doorbell rang persistently. She struggled to get up, her body aching all over, her bare feet sinking into the icy cold floor. Through the peephole, she saw two men in sharp suits, their faces expressionless, with a black sedan parked behind them. She hesitated, but finally opened the door. A gust of cold wind rushed in, making her shiver. Ms. Lynn Mange. The leading man presented a document. We are from Hengxin Law Firm. We are here on behalf of Mr. Nguyen to handle matters related to the division of property and legal action. Please sign this document. Lynn Mange recognized the law firm. It was a well-known firm in the city, especially for handling high-end commercial disputes and family trusts. The head lawyer, surnamed Chun, had been Nguyen's legal advisor for many years. She assumed that at least Attorney Chun would be on her side, or at least remain neutral. I won't sign, Lynn Mange screamed, her voice hoarse and cracked. This is illegal. Nguyen is retaliating. Attorney Chun, you know I'm Mrs. Gu. You can't help him force me. Attorney Chin's expression remained unchanged, as if he had anticipated her reaction. Ms. Lin, please calm down. This document is based on the relevant clauses of the supplementary agreement to the prenuptial agreement, which was delivered last night and confirmed by you. The procedure is legal. Furthermore, Mr. Gu Yin has formally retained our firm to handle all legal matters related to you, including any lawsuits filed against you on behalf of the company. His tone was businesslike, even carrying a subtle hint of detachment. On behalf of the company, Sumi? Lin Mange felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave. He really wanted to wipe her out completely? Ms. Lin, please cooperate. Another, younger lawyer stepped forward, handed her a pen, and said, you can leave with your basic belongings. Otherwise, we will apply for enforcement according to law and assist the relevant departments in their investigation. No, I won't sign. You can't do this. Lin Mange abruptly slapped the documents out of the lawyer's hand, the papers falling like snowflakes. I need to find my brother. I need to find Lin Feng. He'll help me. You just wait. She rushed back to her study like a madwoman, grabbed her still-functioning personal cell phone, and dialed her brother Lin Feng's number with trembling hands. Beep, beep, the long, drawn-out tones sounded like a death knell, just when she thought no one would answer. The call finally connected, only to be answered by a cold, unfamiliar female voice. Hello. The number you dialed is out of service. Shut down. Impossible. Lin Feng holds the reins of the company's finances. How could the system possibly shut down? Undeterred, Lin Mange dialed several of Lin Feng's close confidence numbers, but without exception, they were either switched off or disconnected. The remaining calls were answered, but as soon as they heard her voice, they hurriedly hung up, and subsequent calls went to a busy signal. Panic gripped her heart like vines. She stumbled to the window and looked down. Across the street, several uniformed men were surrounding Lin Feng's usual luxury car, seemingly conducting an inspection. Not far away, several other cars slowly pulled up, and the people who got out quickly dispersed, seemingly casually, yet subtly blocking several exits of the villa. They weren't protecting her. They were spying on her. They were waiting for her to walk right into their trap. In her despair, she suddenly remembered someone, Attorney Zhou, the man who helped her handle all the shady asset transfers, set up shell companies overseas, and even covered up the hospital baby switching incident. He was her most secretive frontman, her most trusted henchman. Only he could help her. Only he knew all the secret routes, knew how to get the money out, and knew how to deal with Gu Yan. Trembling, she found Attorney Zhou's encrypted number, hid in the dressing room, and dialed it in a low voice. This time, the call connected quickly. Who is it? Attorney Zhou's voice was as steady as ever, carrying a professional calmness. Attorney Zhou, it's me, Lin Mange. She was practically screaming. Help me. Gu Yan has gone mad. He froze all my assets. He produced a supplementary agreement. Now the lawyers are blocking the door, forcing me to sign. I can't even contact my brother. Attorney Zhou, only you can help me. Quickly, use those overseas accounts to get me some cash. Also, think of a way to destroy the evidence Gu Yan has. I'll pay any price. There was silence for a few seconds on the other end of the phone. Those few seconds of silence felt like an eternity to Lin Mange. Then, Attorney Zhou's voice rang out again. But this time it was no longer the usual respectful and discreet tone. Instead, it carried a businesslike, even somewhat sympathetic tone. Ms. Lin, I'm sorry. I am no longer responsible for your overseas assets and related legal matters. Lin Mange froze, her mind blank. What? What do you mean? Attorney Zhou, what did you say? You're not taking responsibility? Why? As Attorney Zhou casually stated, starting from midnight today, I, and the entire special asset handling team I lead, have officially accepted Mr. Gu Yan's full acquisition and been incorporated into his newly established risk control and compliance review department. In short, Ms. Lin, I am now Mr. Gu Yan's legal counsel. Boom. Lin Mange felt a loud bang in her ear, as if she had been struck hard on the top of her head by a heavy hammer. The phone slipped from her hand and fell onto the carpet. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Only tears mixed with snot streamed down her face uncontrollably. Attorney Zhou is one of Gu Yan's people. The knife she trusted most, the one who held all her dirty secrets, has already changed hands. On the phone, Attorney Zhou's voice continued, coldly cruel. Furthermore, Ms. Lin, regarding the several special matters you previously entrusted to us, we have, as requested by Mr. Gu Yan, fully archived and backed up the relevant vouchers and records, and submitted them to the relevant regulatory agencies and your company's board audit committee. These include the flow of funds transferred through the shell company Blue Ocean International to cover Xingmon Technology's core patent licensing fees, tax records showing the transfer of benefits to your personal account through fabricated consulting contracts, and he paused, his voice lowering but becoming even clearer. Regarding the index of the entire surveillance video recording and preliminary witness testimonies from the baby handover in the VIP delivery room of the private hospital on October 7th of last year. Mr. Gu Yan asked me to tell you, the game is exciting, but cheaters must be eliminated. Beep, beep, beep. The call ended. Lin Mange slumped in the corner of the walk-in closet, trembling like an autumn leaf. Every word of Attorney Zhou's words was like a poisoned needle, piercing her brain and churning her nerves. Patent fee transfer, fictitious contracts, tax records, and that date, October 7th of last year. That was the night before she gave birth. Surveillance footage, witnesses. Gu Yan knew everything. Not only did he know, but he also presented this evidence to the board of directors and the regulators like a Christmas present. What does this mean? It means she's not only bankrupt financially, but also irrecoverably ruined legally and in terms of reputation. Those shareholders, who might have still had some past ties or wanted to see her fail, are now directly responsible for the company's crimes. A malignant tumor that must be removed. They will avoid her like the plague, and may even rush to testify against her to protect themselves. And that child, that heir she had painstakingly acquired to consolidate her position. Once the truth is revealed, she will have nothing left to hide as the young mistress of the Gu family. A slightly impatient knock came from outside the door. Ms. Lin, please open the door and cooperate with our work. We need to conduct an asset inventory. Lin Mange tightly covered her mouth, trying to stifle a scream. She huddled in the dark walk-in closet, feeling as if Gu Yan had laid a trap all around her. She thought she was the hunter, but she was the fattest prey in the cage. All those allies, henchmen, and white gloves she thought she knew, they were all just spies planted by Gu Yan. Gu Yan, how long has he been biding his time? How deep has his scheme gone? When did he begin to suspect the child? And when did he start trying to win over Attorney Zhou? Half a year? A year? Or was it from the first time she started to meddle in the company's accounts? It's terrifying to think about. She finally understood that Gu Yan's words last night. The game has begun. We're not a bluff. He had only torn away the first layer of the veil. Beneath that veil lay a meticulously crafted machine of revenge, one she could neither comprehend nor contend with. Just then, her personal phone vibrated again with a new text message from an unknown number. She opened it to find only one picture. The picture showed her brother, Lin Feng, his face ashen, surrounded by several people. His head bowed as he got into an inconspicuous minivan. Below the picture was a line of text. Lin Feng is suspected of embezzlement and commercial bribery and has been placed under coercive measures. Next up is you. Choose. A. Open the door and sign. B. Wait for a knock. Lin Mange stared at the text message, her last line of defense crumbling completely. She felt as if all her bones had been removed, collapsing limply to the floor. Outside the door, Attorney Chin's knocking became more rhythmic, like a countdown. She knew she had no choice. Gu Yan had never given her a choice, but a verdict. Trembling, she crawled with all her might toward the door of the dressing room, toward the door that would soon decide her fate. Each step crushed the last shred of her dignity, and she knew this was just the beginning. When she signed that name, she would lose not only money and freedom, but also the last foothold she had in this world. Gu Yan's revenge was like a spider web. Once you were caught, you could never escape until you were slowly drained clean. And she, Lin Mange, had finally become that moth struggling in vain on the web. Lin Mange's pen hovered above the paper for a full half-minute, the tip trembling like a candle flame in the wind, the ink spreading into a small black dot, like her festering life at this moment. Attorney Chin didn't urge her. He simply touched the end of the document, where her signature was required, with a cold, ritualistic gesture, as if he weren't witnessing the signing of a divorce agreement, but rather issuing a death certificate to a corpse. She finally put pen to paper, Her signature was crooked and illegible. Even she couldn't recognize the three characters Lin Mange. After signing the last stroke, she felt as if all her strength had been drained away. Her wrist went limp, and the pen rolled onto the carpet, leaving a winding trail of ink. Ms. Lin, thank you for your cooperation. Attorney Chen deftly collected the documents, along with the crucial supplementary agreement to the prenuptial agreement, and locked them in his titanium briefcase. The young lawyer behind him immediately stepped forward and gently placed a thin white envelope on the coffee table in front of Lin Mange. What is this? Lin Mange's voice was hoarse, as unpleasant as a broken gong. She stared at the envelope, pure white, without any markings. Yet it exuded a dangerous aura more chilling than black. That's what Mr. Guyan means, Attorney Chen said, adjusting his gold-rimmed glasses. His gaze behind the lenses was utterly cold. You have the right to know the truth, especially before you leave the Gu family and start a new life. After saying this, he nodded slightly to the young lawyer, turned and left without a trace of lingering. The heavy oak door closed behind them with a dull thud, as if marking the end of a certain phase in Lin Mange's life. The room fell silent again. Only Lin Mange's heavy breathing and the pounding of her own heartbeat remained. She stared at the white envelope as if it were a coiled, venomous snake. She didn't want to touch it. Her intuition told her that what was inside would be more devastating than all the money and status she had lost combined. But in the end, curiosity and an almost masochistic desire overcame her fear. She reached out, her fingertips touching the smooth, cold surface of the envelope. Trembling, she tore open the seal and pulled out the documents inside. The first page is a beautifully printed paternity test report. Her gaze was instantly drawn to the conclusion section based on the existing sample. Guyan was ruled out as the biological father of the boy being identified. Buzz. Lin Mange's mind went blank, as if she had been struck hard by a hammer. Although Guyan had mentioned DNA last night, and although she had her own ulterior motives, the impact of seeing this written report in black and white right in front of her was still devastating. She stared at those lines of text, over and over again, as if hoping they were a printing error. No, this can't be. How could the sampling go wrong? She clearly planned it so meticulously. She frantically flipped to the second page. It was a high-definition surveillance screenshot, the timestamp clearly showing 2:15 a.m. on October 7th of last year, the time when she was at her weakest after giving birth, and also the time when the baby was taken to the centralized care facility. The scene was in the fire escape of the VIP floor of a private hospital. A woman in a nurse's uniform and wearing a mask was handing a swaddled baby to a man wearing a baseball cap. Although the face was blurred, Lin Mange recognized the man's jawline and ear features as he turned around. It was her lover, Zhao Tianyu, the vice president of Yunchuang Technology, a competitor of Xingmon Technology. Below the screenshot, a few lines of small print explain: surveillance footage source, Rinha Hospital's internal security system. The deleted segments have been repaired. The identities of the parties involved in the handover were confirmed through gait and biometric comparison as Zhao Tianyu and his hired medical staff member, Li. The infant's temporary monitoring record has been altered. A copy of the original record has been saved separately. Lin Mange's fingers clenched spasmodically, almost crushing the paper. She remembered. That night, Zhao Tianyu had indeed come. He had used the excuse of visiting to whisper in her ear, "Don't worry. Everything's arranged. Our son will be the heir of the Gu family." She had been ecstatically believing this, basking in the glow of her impending marriage to Mrs. Gu and the paving the way for Zhao Tianyu. She had assumed Zhao Tianyu had found a powerful figure in the obstetrics department, but she hadn't expected Gu Yan to be able to recover surveillance footage from such a place. The third page contained a bank statement. The recipient was a nurse named Li. The amount was huge, and the remitter was an offshore account she had never seen before. However, the remarks section clearly stated switching fee, Zhao, and the remittance date was a week before she gave birth. Page 4. Page 5 revealed even more details she was unaware of. How Zhao Tianyu, using the child's identity, repeatedly extracted core data from Xingmon Technology over nearly a year, and how he passed it on to Yunchuang Technology through intermediaries. What role her so-called good brother Lin Feng played in facilitating this. and even how much kickback he secretly pocketed. Each and every detail, with its time, place, people, and amount, was clearly laid out, forming a complete chain of evidence. It turns out that what she thought was a perfect switch was just a play staged for her by Zhao Tianyu and Lin Feng. They exploited her ambition and folly, not only making her bear Zhao Tianyu's child, but also making her the perfect cover for stealing trade secrets and transferring company assets. And she naively believed that she was in control of everything, thinking that this child was her biggest bargaining chip to bind Gu Yan, and even to eventually take over Xingman. Ah! Lin Mange let out a piercing scream, tearing the document in her hand to shreds. The scraps of paper flew like snowflakes, landing on her disheveled hair and expensive pajamas. She trembled violently, not from the cold, but from a shame and anger that seeped into her very bones. She had been tricked. Tricked by Zhao Tianyu, tricked by Lin Feng, and even more so, tricked by her own ridiculous desires. She paced around the empty living room like a madwoman, her bare feet crunching on the cold floor, leaving trails of stains as she stepped over scraps of paper. She grabbed a water glass and a fruit plate from the coffee table and slammed them against the wall. The sound of shattering porcelain echoed in her ears, but it couldn't vent the rage within her that threatened to consume her. Gu Yan. It's Gu Yan again. He knew all along. He knew everything. He watched her perform like a clown, watched her scheme and plot for a child that wasn't his, watched her team up with the shareholders to oust him. He had been waiting for her to reveal all her cards, waiting for her to put her neck in the noose, and then gently, gracefully, kicking away the stool beneath her feet. This humiliation of being manipulated was more insane to her than losing money and status. Just then, her personal phone started vibrating wildly. The words Zhao Tianyu appeared on the screen. She practically yelled as she answered the phone. Zhao Tianyu, you bastard. You lied to me. That DNA report, you knew all along, didn't you? You and my brother, you conspired to trick me. Zhao Tianyu's slightly hurried voice came from the other end of the phone. Amidst background noise, Mange? Where are you? Listen, things have changed. That madman Gu Yan somehow got hold of evidence and implicated both me and Lin Feng. Lin Feng was just taken away. The company is under a lot of pressure. Things are very tense. You need to find a way to get rid of that original record you have. And that child, the child, Lin Mange interrupted him shrilly, her face streaked with tears and snot. You dare mention the child? That's your offspring. You made me raise him as Gu Yan's son for a whole year. You used me. You've all been using me. Shut up. You stupid woman. Zhao Tianyu's voice suddenly turned fierce. What's the use of saying all this now? Since Gu Yan dared to touch Lin Feng, the next step will definitely be to investigate the child. You must take the child away immediately. Send him to the place I told you about last time. Hurry. Otherwise, we're all doomed. Also, if you dare to keep even a little bit of anything that could harm me, I'll make sure your whole family is wiped out. Threaten me? Lin Mange trembled with rage. Zhao Tianyu, do you think you can still threaten me now? Gu Yan has already revealed everything. I have nothing left. Are you satisfied now? You and your bastard child. Get out of here. Get far away from me. She hysterically hung up the phone and slammed it to the ground. The screen shattered instantly, shards flying everywhere. But she knew Zhao Tianyu was right. Gu Yan wouldn't let the child go. Once the child's identity was exposed, not only her, but also Zhao Tianyu and Lin Feng's crimes would be irrefutable. That child was her only bargaining chip, perhaps the only one she could use to threaten Gu Yan one last time, or rather, her last Achilles heel. No, she couldn't just sit and wait to die. She had to find Gu Yan. She had to ask him what he really wanted. She had to resolve the matter of the child completely, even if it meant trading the child for a little breathing space. She stumbled into the bedroom, grabbed a coat haphazardly, and rushed to the nursery. Gu Yan had already sent the nanny away. In the cradle, the baby boy she called her son slept soundly, his rosy face adorable. Looking at that face, she felt a mix of emotions, hatred, resentment, but mostly a desperate madness driven to desperation. She roughly picked the baby up from the cradle, startling the child awake, who began to cry loudly. Ignoring the baby's cries, she wrapped him tightly in a thin blanket and rushed outside with him in her arms. However, when she opened the garage door to back the car out, She was devastated to find that it wouldn't start no matter what she did. She lay down to check and saw that all four tires had been punctured and were flattened against the ground. Looking up, she noticed several inconspicuous vehicles parked around the villa and at the intersection. Some figures hovered near the cars, though not in uniform. Their cold, scrutinizing gazes were palpable. They didn't approach directly, but stood silently guard, like an invisible wall, trapping her firmly in this magnificent cage. She was completely cut off from all options. In despair, she carried her crying child back to the living room and collapsed onto the sofa. The child cried his heart out, and she wept silently along with him. Just then, the television news suddenly interrupted with an urgent message. According to the latest news from this station, Mr. Gu Yan, former chairman of Xingmon Technology, held an emergency press conference this morning to address the company's abnormal stock price fluctuations and internal management issues. Mr. Gu presented substantial evidence accusing former CEO Ms. Lin Mange and her brother Mr. Lin Feng of multiple illegal activities during their tenure, including massive embezzlement, commercial espionage, and forgery of key company documents. It is understood that the relevant evidence has been transferred to judicial proceedings. Furthermore, Mr. Gu also revealed that he will clarify any recent false information circulating online regarding his family's privacy at an appropriate time and reserves the right to pursue legal action. The scene shifts to the press conference. Gu Yan, dressed in a well-tailored dark suit, stands under the spotlight, his expression solemn and resolute. Facing countless flashes and microphones, he speaks eloquently and clearly, showing no trace of yesterday's disheveled state. Behind him, a huge electronic screen is playing excerpts of evidence, among which, flashing by, are the documents signed by Lin Mange. Lin Mange stared intently at the composed man on the screen, her nails digging deep into her palms until they bled. She finally understood completely that Gu Yan didn't need to do anything to her personally. He only needed to stand in the sunlight and gently pluck a few strings, and she would be condemned by everyone and completely overwhelmed by the tide of public opinion. That statement about family privacy and false information hung like a Damocles sword over her head. She knew it was Gu Yan's ultimatum, the most fatal blow he was about to deliver to her and her child. The child was still crying in her arms. His voice weak and pitiful, Lin Mange lowered her head, looking at the little face that so closely resembled Zhao Tianyu's, and suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of disgust and fear. This child, this bastard, was the root of all her tragedy. If it weren't for him, perhaps she could have managed to deal with Gu Yan. Perhaps she could have preserved some of her interests. A terrifying thought uncontrollably surfaced. What if? What if this child didn't exist? Would Gu Yan's biggest weakness disappear? Would a link break in Zhao Tianyu and Lin Feng's chain of evidence? Would she then have a sliver of hope? With trembling hands, she picked up a sharp shard of ceramic from the ground, raised it, and aimed it at the baby's vulnerable neck. Just as the fragments were about to fall, the villa's doorbell rang again. Its crisp tinkling sound, in the deathly silent room, was like a death knell. Lin Mange's hand froze in midair. She slowly turned her head and looked through the peephole. She saw that the person standing outside the door was not one of the people who were watching her, nor was it a lawyer, but Gu Yan. He stood there quietly, impeccably dressed in a suit, as if he were simply returning home from get-off work. But his eyes, peering through the peephole, precisely captured her and the shivering child in her arms. There was no anger, no hatred in his eyes, only a bottomless, icy indifference. He saw it. He must have seen what she just did. Lin Mange felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave, and the shards in her hand clattered to the ground. Holding the child, she staggered backward until her back hit the cold wall. With nowhere left to go, the door was pushed open from the outside. Gu Yan strode in, his footsteps steady and powerful. He didn't even glance at the broken items and scattered scraps of paper on the ground. His gaze was fixed directly on the disheveled Lin Mange. It seems Gu Yan has spoken, her voice eerily calm. You've even lost the last vestige of your maternal instincts. Lin Mange opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Only tears streamed down her face. Gu Yan walked slowly closer, glancing at the child's face with an expression as if he were looking at an object unrelated to him. This child, he said calmly, is disgusting, just like his father, but he's still useful. After speaking, he gestured towards the door. Immediately, Two women in business suits, expressionless, walked in and politely but firmly took the still-crying baby from Lin Mange's stiff arms. "What are you doing? Give him back to me." Lin Mange screamed and lunged forward. But Guyan gently raised his hand to block her. "Give it back to you?" Guyan's lips curled into a chilling smile. "Lin Mange, you don't deserve to be a mother. I'll find a suitable place to settle this child. As for you," he leaned down, close to her ear, and said, in a voice only the two of them could hear, word by word, "Enjoy your last moments of freedom. The truth about this child, and all the evidence of your conspiracy with his father to steal trade secrets and frame your husband, will be on the front page of every media outlet in the city tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Your show has only just begun." After saying that, he straightened up, looked at her again, and turned to leave. The two women, carrying the baby, followed closely behind. Lin Mange collapsed to the ground, watching helplessly as the baby's swaddling clothes disappeared through the doorway. Hearing the receding footsteps, the last vestige of her strength crumbled. She knew Guyan meant what he said. Tomorrow, she would be the laughingstock of the entire city, a pariah, and her meticulously planned baby-switching scheme had ultimately cost her her entire life. She curled up on the cold floor, like a bird with completely broken wings, too weak even to cry out. Guyan's revenge was precise, ruthless, and meticulously planned, utterly destroying everything she had, including her dignity as a woman, her right to be a mother, and her last shred of humanity. And all of this, simply because she had first extended her greedy, dark hand. She finally understood that in this war she had so readily believed she could wage, she had lost from the very beginning, a complete and utter defeat. And Guyan was the ruthless winner, the one who held the reins forever. It was raining at 7 in the morning. It wasn't a downpour, but the kind of dense, cold winter rain that seeps into your bones. Lin Mange was curled up on the Italian leather sofa in the living room, wrapped only in a thin blanket. The heating had been cut off long ago. Guyan had severed all energy supply to the villa, as if to strip her away completely, both materially and spiritually. She hadn't slept a wink all night. Her ears perked up like radar, picking up every rustle of wind outside. After yesterday afternoon's baby-scratching battle, the house was eerily silent. The cries of the imposter's son seemed to still linger in her ears, impossible to shake off. Guyan's last words, "Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock." The city's headline revolved wildly in her mind like a time bomb's countdown. She tried to escape. In the dead of night, she used a shard of porcelain to cut through the flimsy security bars in the garden. She'd barely climbed over when she saw two inconspicuous black cars parked in the rain, their headlights off, like lurking beasts. She could even feel someone coldly watching her through the car windows. She retreated again. Guyan hadn't sent anyone to arrest her. He'd simply trapped her there, like a cat toying with a mouse, forcing her to slowly exhaust herself in despair. Her phone was long gone. The internet was cut off, and she was an island in the city. She didn't know what the outside world had become, but this unknown fear was more tormenting than the known possibility of death. She couldn't reach Zhao Tianyu by phone. Lin Feng was nowhere to be found, and those shareholders and close friends who had once fawned over her were now probably avoiding her like the plague. Time flowed by in the dead silence, each second feeling like an eternity. Finally, the antique clock on the wall struck 9. Almost simultaneously, a faint sound of a key turning in a lock came from the front door. Lin Mange shuddered and instinctively gripped the thin blanket around her, her nails digging into her flesh. She tried to dodge, but found her limbs stiff and unresponsive. The door opened. Guyan walked in. He carried no umbrella, and fine raindrops clung to his shoulders. A small patch of his expensive bespoke suit was damp, yet it did nothing to diminish his composed elegance. He carried a silver thermos in one hand and a neatly folded newspaper in the other. He didn't look at the disheveled Lin Mange, as if she were merely an eyesore in the room. He went straight to the dining room, placed the thermos on the table, and then unfolded the newspaper and placed it under the vase. After doing all this, he slowly turned around, his gaze calmly landing on Lin Mange. There was no hatred, no anger, not even a ripple in his eyes, as if he were looking at a stranger, or more accurately, an object that had lost its usefulness. "Get up and eat something." Guyan's voice wasn't loud, carrying a strange gentleness. yet it conveyed an undeniable sense of command. If you starve to death, the play can't be performed. Lin Mange trembled, her teeth chattering uncontrollably. She wanted to retort, to scream, to question, but her throat was so dry it felt like she'd swallowed sand. And her voice was hoarse and broken. You still came. The news, the headline? Guyen raised an eyebrow slightly, seemingly finding her question laughable. He walked to the dining table, opened the thermos, and a warm aroma of millet porridge wafted out. He poured himself a glass of warm water, then took out a delicate porcelain bowl, filled it halfway with porridge, and placed it in front of the empty seat opposite him. News. Guyen chuckled, picked up the newspaper, and shook it. The huge headline on the front page instantly caught Lin Mange's eye. Former CEO of Xingmon, Lin Mange, is suspected of massive corruption. Police have launched an investigation. Her moral depravity and paternity scandals have caused a public uproar. Below the title is a blurry screenshot from a security camera. Although blurred, the man in the baseball cap and the shape of the swaddled baby are clearly discernible. Next to it is a small accompanying picture of her behaving wildly in the meeting room yesterday. A stark contrast. Lin Mange felt a sudden darkness engulf her, and she nearly collapsed. It turned out that, without needing to go online or watch television, Guyen had personally delivered her death sentence to her. Come and sit down. Guyen's tone deepened, carrying the imposing aura of someone who had long held a high position. Or do you want me to invite you? Lin Mange practically crawled over. Her legs felt like cotton, and she had to hold onto the edge of the table to barely manage to sit down in a chair. She stared at the bowl of steaming millet porridge in front of her, her stomach churning, but she dared not touch the spoon. Guyen sat down opposite her, slowly picked up a spoon, scooped up a spoonful of porridge, blew on it, but didn't drink it, just looked at her. It tastes good, with yam and pumpkin added. Good for the stomach. He commented on it as if he were reviewing a dish, his tone flat. Just like the soup you used to make for me. Remember? When you first married me, you were learning to cook, and you put in too much salt, but insisted it was for health. I drank it and didn't say it was bad, because back then, I thought it was a little something from you. Lin Mange suddenly looked up, her eyes red-rimmed as she stared at him. Why was he bringing up these old stories? Was he mocking her hypocrisy, or demonstrating his tolerance? Unfortunately, Guyen's tone shifted abruptly, his gaze turning icy. The soup you added later wasn't just salt. There were also aphrodisiacs to please shareholders, a mind-altering potion to transfer assets, and meat paste to feed your lover. Lin Mange, your greatest skill is disguising a little sincerity as boundless affection, deceiving others and yourself. Lin Mange shuddered, and the spoon in her hand clattered into the bowl, splashing porridge that scalded the back of her hand. But she was completely unaware. Guyen, what do you want? Her voice trembled with sobs, filled with desperate pleading. The child, what have you done to him? That matter. Can you please not make it public? I beg you. The child? Guyen put down his spoon, leaned back in his chair, and placed his hands clasped on his lap, adopting a scrutinizing posture. You still have the nerve to mention that child? What were you planning to do with those broken pieces of porcelain yesterday afternoon? Kill him to silence him? Lin Mange, you're not only stupid, but also vicious. That's your own flesh and blood. Even if he's Zhao Tianyu's child, he's still flesh of your own flesh. You'd sever even that blood relation just to protect yourself? With each word he spoke, Lin Mange lowered her head further. Shame, regret, and fear gnawed at her heart like venomous snakes. I was confused. I was scared. She was incoherent. Fear? Guyen sneered. When you colluded with the shareholders to force a change of government, weren't you afraid? When you transferred assets, weren't you afraid? When you were lying under Zhao Tianyu, plotting how to turn Xingmon into your ATM, weren't you afraid? Lin Mange, your fear has always been directed only at yourself, never at the sins you have committed. He stood up, walked up to her, looked down at her, reached out, grabbed her chin, and forced her to look up. His fingertips were icy cold, but his grip was strong, making her wince in pain. Look at me, Guyen commanded. Look closely. Remember this face today. Remember this feeling of helplessness, because this is the only expression you'll remember about me for the rest of your life. Lin Mange was forced to meet his gaze. Those eyes, once brimming with love, were now unfathomable, like two dry wells, unable to reflect her disheveled state. Only a cold emptiness. That child. I had him sent away. Gu Yin released her chin, as if touching something dirty, and casually wiped his fingers with a handkerchief before sending him to a place you'll never find. As for Zhao Tianyuha, he's even more despicable than you. He just tried to leave the country with his last bit of money, but was brought back to get a reduced sentence. He sold you out completely, including how you switched babies in the delivery room, how you used the child to obtain trade secrets, how you plan to take over Xingman after my death. Every single detail has his handwritten confession and recordings. Lin Mange felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Her whole body went limp, and she only managed to stay upright on the chair. Zhao Tianyu had betrayed her too? Her last hope was gone. As for you, Gu Yin turned around, walked back to the dining table, picked up the newspaper, and gently slapped it on the table. Public disclosure is certain, but how it's disclosed, and to what extent, depends on your attitude. He leaned close to her ear and spoke in a whisper that was enough to send her shivers down her spine. Sign this agreement. Admit to all accusations. Assume full legal responsibility. And, in a public statement, clearly state that all actions are personal and have nothing to do with the Gu family or Xingman technology. At the same time, voluntarily relinquish all visitation and custody rights to that child and sign a permanent confidentiality agreement. Lin Mange trembled as she picked up the thick document on the table. It wasn't an ordinary divorce agreement. It was a confession, a contract of servitude. If she signed it, she would not only go to jail, but also bear all the stigma, and might never see her child again. But if she didn't sign, she couldn't imagine the consequences. Gu Yin would ruin her reputation, 1,000 times worse than she was now. No, I can't sign. She shook her head, tears and snot streaming down her face. Gu Yin, I'm your wife. We've been married for 3 years. Don't you have any feelings for me at all? For the children? Wife? Gu Yin straightened up as if he'd heard the biggest joke in the world. His eyes filled with disdain. When have you ever treated me like a husband? In your heart, I'm just your ladder, your cash cow, your stepping stone to the pinnacle of power. As for affection, he paused, a faint, almost imperceptible weariness in his voice. But it was instantly replaced by coldness. 3 years ago, I was in a car accident and hospitalized. The doctor gave me a critical condition notice. You stood outside the operating room, holding my hand and saying that as long as you lived. I didn't want anything. And what happened? As soon as I was out of danger, you were busy transferring the shares under my name. Lin Mange, you were the one who exhausted all affection first. Lin Mange was stunned. He actually knew about this. He knew about this. She thought she had gotten away with it completely undetected. Gu Yin stopped looking at her on the verge of collapse, turned and walked towards the door. Before opening it, he paused. Without turning back, I'll give you 10 minutes to think it over. Sign it. You go in. Your child can live a peaceful life, and your parents might be able to enjoy their old age. Don't sign it. He turned his head, his gaze coldly sweeping over her. I don't mind letting everyone know that you, Lin Mange, are not only an embezzler, but also a madwoman who attempted to kill her child. As for your parents, I think they wouldn't want to be evicted from the retirement community in their twilight years because of their daughter's scandal, would they? The door closed gently. Once again, Lin Mange was alone in the restaurant, along with the heavy agreement that would determine her fate. Outside, the rain pattered, like countless tiny mocking words. She looked at the bold, black text on the agreement. I, Lin Mange, confess to all the aforementioned facts and voluntarily accept all legal consequences. She knew this wasn't a choice. This was the only way out Gu Yin had given her, a one-way street leading to hell. She picked up the pen with trembling hands. The nib hovered over the signature area, unable to fall for a long time. Memories of the past 3 years flashed through her mind, the sweet illusions, the greedy deals, the moments of betrayal. Finally, her gaze settled on Gu Yan's emotionless eyes from just now. A tear fell onto the paper, blurring the ink. She gritted her teeth, mustered all her strength, and in that instant, wrote her name. The handwriting was messy and distorted, like her life that had been completely torn apart. Just as she finished writing the last stroke, the door opened. Attorney Chun, who had appeared in the doorway at some point, walked over expressionlessly and took the agreement. He didn't even glance at Lin Mange, as if she were already invisible. Ms. Lin, thank you for your cooperation. The car is outside and will take you to where you need to go. Attorney Chen's voice was calm and even. Mr. Gu asked me to tell you, the game is over. Rehabilitation is important, and you should try to get a reduced sentence. As for that child, he will be fine. Much better off than with you. Lin Mange did not resist, nor did she cry anymore. Like a puppet, she was helped up by Attorney Chun and mechanically walked out. When she passed the mirror in the entryway, she caught a glimpse of her reflection, disheveled hair, sunken eyes, and a deathly pale face, like a walking corpse that had just crawled out of a grave. This was Lin Mange's end. Not a spectacular destruction, but a silent demise, a complete stripping away of everything. Guyan didn't even lay a hand on her. He simply used the law and rules, along with her own greed and folly, to weave a net that bound her tightly, then gracefully withdrew, leaving her alone to taste the bitter fruit of endless regret and despair. Reaching the doorway, the cold rain stung her face, bringing her slightly more awake. She glanced back at the villa that had once symbolized her glory and dreams, now appearing particularly gloomy and oppressive in the rain. Guyan stood by the second-floor window, his figure tall and straight, looking down at his phone, seemingly oblivious to what was happening below. He didn't look at her again. Lin Mange was shoved into the black sedan. The door closed, isolating her from the outside world and from her past. The car started smoothly and drove into the misty rain. She knew that what awaited her was not a new beginning, but a long and dark end. And Guyan, the man she once thought she loved most and also despised most, taught her her final lesson in the cruelest way, in the face of absolute power and calm planning. All madness and scheming are nothing more than the clumsy performance of a clown. As the car drove further away, on the second floor of the villa, Guyan put down his phone. A newly received text message appeared on the screen. Lin Mange has been signed for and is en route. The child has been settled and is safe. The main evidence chain against Zhao Tianyu and Lin Feng has been completed and the transfer is finished. He walked to his desk, pulled open the bottom drawer, and inside was a small velvet box. He opened it, and inside wasn't jewelry, but a small, slightly faded ginkgo leaf bookmark. It was the one Lin Mange had slipped into his book on their first date. He stared at the bookmark for a few seconds, a complex emotion flashing across his eyes before his gaze returned to its icy coldness. He closed the box, put it back in the drawer, and locked it. Outside the window, the rain continued to fall, but the city lights had already flickered back on through the rain, heralding the beginning of a new cycle. Xingmon technology would rise from the ashes, while Lin Mange would become yet another cautionary tale in business history, serving as a warning to future generations. Guyan turned around and looked at the gradually brightening horizon outside the window. His face showed no joy of victory, only the weariness of a great battle and a deeper calm. He had won this battle, won completely, but he had also won loneliness. Everything that needed cleaning has been cleaned up. He spoke softly to the empty room, whether to himself or to the departed figure. It was unclear whether it was time to rebuild. He picked up another document from the table, a restructuring plan for Xingmon technology over the next 3 years. The pen fell, ink spreading across the paper, outlining a new blueprint. Lin Mange's chapter had been completely turned. His story, however, was just beginning. From this day forward, his world would no longer have a place for his bedmate, only partners and potential enemies. Trust was more precious than gold, and also more easily broken. This time, he wouldn't give it up so easily. The car didn't head towards the detention center, but instead turned into a secluded alleyway that Lin Mange had never been before. Rainwater pooled on the asphalt, creating murky puddles that splashed with dull thuds as the wheels rolled over them. The windows were tinted with dark privacy film, so she couldn't see the outside world and could only judge the car's speed by the occasional passing shadows. Attorney Chin sat in the passenger seat, not uttering a single word, his breathing almost inaudible. This deathly silence was more agonizing than interrogation. Lin Mange felt like a packed suitcase being transported to a designated disposal site. After what seemed like an eternity, the car finally stopped. The door opened, and the damp, chilly air was thick with the smells of mildew and disinfectant. A hand reached out and firmly grabbed her arm. She stumbled and was dragged out of the car, her feet sinking into the wet ground, the chill running from her toes to the top of her head. She squinted, adjusting to the dim light. Before her stood an old-fashioned office building that looked long abandoned. The walls were peeling, and most of the windows were broken, like countless empty eyes. A weathered bronze plaque hung at the entrance. Temporary reception area. Hongyuan Asset Liquidation Center. Hongyuan? That was a very low-profile subsidiary of Guyan, specializing in handling non-performing assets. Go inside. Attorney Chen finally spoke, his voice completely flat. Lin Mange was half pushed and half shoved into the lobby on the first floor. The lobby was empty, with only a few low-wattage light bulbs hanging from the ceiling, casting a dim, yellowish glow. Several expressionless staff members in gray uniforms sat behind makeshift desks, organizing thick stacks of files. No one looked up when they entered, as if it were commonplace. She was led to the innermost office. Attorney Chen gestured for her to sit down, then went behind his desk, opened a metal cabinet, took out a stack of documents bound with hemp rope, and placed them heavily on the table. Dust swirled in the light. Ms. Lin, before the formal handover, there are some procedures that require your cooperation to complete. Attorney Chen opened the top document and pushed it in front of her. This was a report on the debts and assets of your brother, Lin Feng, and the Lin family business. Lin's Industrial. Lin Mange's pupils contracted sharply. Lin's Industries? That was her brother Lin Feng's entire fortune, and her family's greatest asset. Gu Yan was about to make a move against the Lin family. She opened the document with trembling hands. The first page was Lin's Industrial's latest balance sheet, with several figures highlighted in red. Total liabilities amounted to 2.7 billion, and the debt-to-asset ratio exceeded 300%. In the assets section, the factories, equipment, and land that they had once been so proud of were all marked as mortgaged, seized, or pending appraisal. This is impossible, Lin Mange exclaimed. Although Lin's industrial group had expanded rapidly, it had always been profitable. How could it have so much debt? Profit? A cold smile curled at Attorney Chen's lips as he turned to the next page. This was a summary of the audit report for all related party transactions between Lin's Industrial and Xingmon Technology over the past 3 years. Your brother, Lin Feng, abused his position at Xingmon Technology, embezzling over 800 million yuan by fabricating purchase contracts, inflating raw material prices, and shifting order profits. These funds were not invested in the normal production and operation of Lin's Industrial, but rather used to purchase luxury goods, gamble, and acquire multiple properties and works of art overseas. Lin Mange stared at the densely packed tables and data, her mind blank. She knew Lin Feng was greedy, but she hadn't expected him to be so ruthless and so stupid. He had actually dug such a huge hole in the company. This is only what's on the surface. Attorney Chen continued turning the page, his tone as calm as reciting a recipe. The more troublesome part is what's behind the scenes. Lin Feng, using Lin's Industrial as collateral, borrowed over 1.2 billion yuan in high-interest loans from 13 private lending organizations. Most of these loans were used to cover his losses at the Macau casinos and to maintain the Lin family's extravagant lifestyle. Now, 3 of the lenders have jointly filed a lawsuit demanding immediate repayment of principal and interest from Lin's Industrial and have applied for asset preservation. Loan sharks, Lin Mange muttered to herself, a chill running through her body. She knew the methods of these underground banks and the consequences of not repaying the money. Not only that, Attorney Chen pulled out another document, this time red, with the court's emblem on the cover. This was a newly issued civil ruling from the court, accepting the bankruptcy reorganization application against Lin's Industrial. The applicant is one of your brother Lin Feng's main creditors, and also Xingmon Technology's largest raw material supplier, Ruidong Group. Lin Mange suddenly looked up, staring intently at Attorney Chen. Ruidong Group? Wasn't that Gu Yan's uncle's business? Gu Yan had even thought of this, having a family member file for bankruptcy. It would both absolve him of responsibility and allow him to quickly take control of the mess left behind by Lin's Industries. Gu Yan, he wanted to destroy the Lin family. Her voice was hoarse and filled with despair. Putting her in a deadly situation? Attorney Chen glanced at her, a hint of mockery in his eyes. Ms. Lin, it was you and your family who first reached into places you shouldn't have. Mr. Gu Yan is merely reclaiming what rightfully belongs to him and dealing with violators according to the rules. Now, all assets under Lin's industrial, including the 2 villas under your parents' names, your brother's luxury cars, and the calligraphy and antiques collected by the Lin family, are subject to liquidation. Liquidation, those 2 words struck my heart like a hammer blow. The Lin family was finished, utterly finished. My parents, they're getting old, Lin Mange struggled to say, trying to grasp at the last straw. Of the 2 villas under your parents' names, one was purchased after your brother became the vice general manager of Xingmon Technology, and the source of funds is questionable and is being investigated. The other, although purchased earlier, was mortgaged a second time last year, with the loan funds flowing into your brother's private account. Attorney Chen ruthlessly shattered her illusions. As for your parents, if they cannot prove their legal ownership of these assets and repay the corresponding debts, they will likely need to move out. However, considering their age, Mr. Guyen specially approved a small resettlement allowance, enough for them to rent a suitable apartment in the suburbs and live out their later years in peace. Living out their old age in peace? Moving from a luxury villa to a small apartment in the suburbs. From a life of luxury to careful budgeting. Isn't this another form of torture for the Lin family elders who are used to extravagance? Lin Mange slumped in her chair, too exhausted to even struggle. Guyan's scheme was meticulous to the finest detail. He not only wanted to ruin her reputation, but also to drag her entire family down with her into the abyss. This all-encompassing, thorough destruction was far more despairing than direct physical annihilation. Now, let's talk about your personal assets. Attorney Chen presented another folder. According to the prenuptial agreement and supplementary agreement, and considering your suspected criminal offenses, all your assets have been frozen. However, some items are for your personal daily use or possession. With Mr. Guyan's consent, you may dispose of them as you see fit, and the proceeds will supplement your living expenses. He pushed over a tray with several items on it: a pair of jade earrings, a diamond necklace, an antique-looking dragonfly brooch inlaid with a large sapphire, and several pieces of gold jewelry. These were all Lin Mange's personal collection. Some she had bought herself, and some were gifts from others. She thought she had hidden them well, but she never expected them to be found. These things must be worth a lot of money, right? Lin Mange looked at the sapphire brooch, an heirloom from her grandmother, known as the Lin family's treasure, and supposedly priceless. She had originally planned to use it to smooth things over if all else failed. The value needs to be assessed. Attorney Chen beckoned to a staff member, who handed over a tray. Mr. Li, could you please take a look? The elderly man, known as Master Li, wearing white gloves and holding a high-powered magnifying glass, silently and meticulously examined each item. As time ticked by, Lin Mange's heart pounded with anxiety. Finally, Master Li put down the magnifying glass, removed his gloves, sighed, looked at Lawyer Chen, and shook his head. How is it? Attorney Chen asked, his tone flat and indifferent. They're all fakes. Master Li's voice was old and hoarse. The jade was a B-grade product, injected with resin and dyed. The diamonds were zircon. The gold jewelry was copper plated with gold. As for this brooch, he picked up the sapphire dragonfly brooch that Lin Mange had placed so much hope in Diana, turned it over to examine the back. The sapphire was synthetic. The setting was silver plated with rhodium, and the small diamonds were crystal imitations. The craftsmanship was crude. It was worth at most a few hundred yuan. This Lin family heirloom was quite overpriced. A fake. Impossible. Lin Mange jumped up as if pricked by a needle, then slumped back down due to weakness. She stared intently at the brooch and screamed, "This is what my grandmother left me. It's real. You must have made a mistake. Or it must be Guyan. He switched the real one. Ms. Lin, please watch your words." Attorney Chen coldly interrupted her. 3 months ago, around the time you started frequently contacting pawnshops and underground banks, Mr. Gu Yin had already arranged for people to replace your hidden valuables in batches. Those jewels you tried to sell were all identified as fakes. It seems your good brother, or your good lover, had already prepared these surprises for you. Or perhaps your Lin family's wealth was already depleted, and these heirlooms are nothing more than props for self-deception. Lin Mange was struck dumb, staring blankly at the cheap and ugly imitations on the tray under the dim light. She had always thought of herself as a rich heiress born with a silver spoon in her mouth, believing her family had a deep foundation, and that these jewels were her last resort. In the end, they were all fake. Had her brother switched them to pay off his gambling debts? Or had Zhao Tianyu swapped her treasured items while deceiving her? Or had Gu Yin already quietly accomplished all of this long before? Either way, it filled her with a profound sense of humiliation and absurdity. The family honor she had desperately tried to protect, the foundation of her wealth, had all turned out to be nothing but bubbles. She was like a clown in a gorgeous costume, performing her self-righteous greed on the stage Gu Yin had set up, unaware that the audience had already seen right through her. Now, do you have any questions? Attorney Chen closed the folder, his voice completely flat. If not, please sign this receipt. You can take these items, but their value is limited. I suggest you convert them into cash. It's not much, but it might be enough for you to have a nice meal occasionally while you're inside. Lin Mange stared at the receipt, then at the glaring counterfeits on the tray, and her last shred of hope vanished. Trembling, she picked up the pen and signed her name on the receipt. The handwriting was even more illegible than her previous confession, as if she had exhausted all her strength just to write it. She picked up the fake brooch, the cold touch sending a shiver down her spine. She had stroked it countless times, imagining the sense of security it would bring. Now, it seemed utterly ironic. The car is waiting outside. Attorney Chen stood up, straightened his suit, and said, Ms. Lin, please, we will arrange for someone to pick up your parents. As for your brother, Lin Feng, his situation is much more complicated than yours, involving multiple criminal offenses. You won't be able to see him for the time being. Lin Mange was lifted up and mechanically let out. As she passed through the hall, she saw several staff members burning some documents. Flames danced in the dim hall, engulfing the papers bearing the name of Lin's Industries into ashes. The air was filled with the smell of burning paper, like a silent funeral being held for the Lin family. She was shoved back into the black sedan. This time, the car didn't stop. It drove straight out of the dark alley and merged into the traffic on the main road. She clutched the fake brooch tightly. The sharp edge pricked her palm, causing a slight pain, but it was nothing compared to the pain in her heart. The city outside the car window was ablaze with lights, a vibrant tapestry of colors. Traffic flowed ceaselessly, a bustling, prosperous scene. But all of this was irrelevant to her now. Her parents were about to lose their home. Her brother was imprisoned. She herself was about to face a long prison sentence. And her once proud family had vanished in the blink of an eye, all thanks to Gu Yan's whims. She looked down at the cheap, fake brooch in her palm. The sapphire reflected no noble luster in the night. A tear fell onto the insect-shaped metal wings and quickly slid down. She finally understood that Gu Yan wanted more than just her failure. He wanted her to witness firsthand how everything she depended on, power, wealth, family, love, and even her own worth, would crumble and shatter little by little under his calm and calculating scheme, revealing its rotten and false nature. This is the highest form of revenge. It's not about destroying your physical body, but about destroying your entire world, making you consciously experience the extreme pain of falling from the clouds into the mire. And for the long years to come, every time you recall it, it will be like dying again. The car drove into the unknown distance, and the rain began to fall again, blurring the city's neon lights into a hazy patchwork of light. Lin Mange leaned back in her seat, closed her eyes, and tears silently soaked her temples. The Lin family's era had ended, but her nightmare had only just begun. Gu Yan stood atop the clouds, coldly watching all this, like wiping away the dust from a collectible, then turned away to continue building his even larger, colder business empire. In this empire, there was no longer a place for Lin Mange, nor for the Lin family. They were merely trash swept out the door, a deliberately erased, disgraceful footnote in the annals of history. The car finally stopped not at a detention center or a prison, but at an old, long-closed hotel, deserted and deserted. Lin Mange was led into a room at the far end of the corridor. The windows were boarded up, and only a low-wattage light bulb hung in the center of the ceiling, casting a dim, oppressive glow. The air was thick with the smell of stale tobacco and mildew. The sheets were gray and cobwebs clung to the corners. Attorney Chen settled her in a wooden chair against the wall, then pulled up another chair and sat opposite her, separated by a peeling square table. He took a sealed folder from his briefcase and gently placed it on the table with a dull thud. Ms. Lin, this is Mr. Gu Yan's arrangement. Attorney Chen's voice remained flat and emotionless. You have 24 hours before the formal proceedings begin. Mr. Guyen said. Perhaps you still have some unfinished business, or some cards yet to be played. An unrevealed card? Lin Mange's previously lifeless eyes trembled slightly. What cards did she have left? Her shares were gone. Her assets frozen. Her family gone. Her child taken away. Even her family heirlooms were fake. She was like a fish stripped of its scales and drained of its blood. What cards did she have left? But Attorney Chen's words, like a fine needle, pierced her numb skin, revealing the still bleeding, resentful festering sore beneath. Yes, she was unwilling. Why was Guyen able to calculate everything flawlessly? Why did she lose so completely? There must be something she overlooked. Something that Guyen didn't know, or something he thought was unimportant, but which could actually be used to blackmail him. Her gaze was fixed on the folder. It wasn't given to her by Guyen, but was her own. A thought, like phosphorescence struck in the darkness, suddenly ignited in her mind. Pen. She spoke hoarsely, as if she had swallowed sand. Attorney Chen took a disposable pen out of his pocket and placed it on the table. Lin Mange didn't reach for a pen. Instead, she scratched at the cracks in the table with her fingernails, her eyes gradually hardening with an almost frenzied light. Attorney Chen, I'd like to make a phone call. It doesn't comply with regulations. Attorney Chen refused decisively. This isn't a call to an outsider. Lin Mange suddenly looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. It's a call to Guyen. I want to tell him myself. Didn't he win? Let him hear what his supposedly perfect victory is built on. Attorney Chen was silent for a few seconds, then pulled out an old-fashioned black keypad phone from his pocket. It wasn't a smartphone and had no internet connection. 3 minutes. He could only call Mr. Guyen. The call connected quickly, as if someone had been waiting on the other end. Guyen. Lin Mange's voice trembled with excitement. She tried to steady her breathing. You think you've won? You think you've destroyed everything I have? Guyen's steady breathing came from the other end of the phone, with the soft sound of keyboard typing in the background. He seemed to be working. Lin Mange, if you want to repeat your resentment, you can save your breath. You should have expected this outcome. You anticipated this. Lin Mange suddenly laughed, her laughter sharp and choked with sobs. Guyen, you overestimate yourself. You think you understand me? You think you understand everything about Xingman? Let me tell you, your proud starting point, the foundation that turned your life around, the prototype of the core algorithm of the apocalypse system, was not your achievement alone. She felt the tapping on the other end of the phone pause for a moment. That brief pause unleashed the torrent of pent-up frustration within her. Do you remember the hardest time of your startup? That rainy night in the study of my dad's old house. You were frantically staring at a pile of draft paper, saying you couldn't find a breakthrough. It was me. I overheard your conversation with your mentor. That idea about dynamic weight adaptive adjustment. I secretly wrote it down, organized it that very night, and stuffed it into your pile of draft paper. You later thought it was your mentor's guidance, or perhaps a sudden flash of inspiration on your part. Huh, it was your wife, your bedmate. She gasped for breath, her words quickening, becoming even more frantic. What did you think that so-called love letter was? I wrote it for you on purpose. It contained the key parameters and logical framework of that line of thought. You fool. You actually thought it was sweet talk, treasuring it like a precious gem. Guyen, without me, there would be no apocalypse. No Xingman today. Half of everything you have now is built on my foundation. You want to destroy me? Fine. Then give me back that half first. Otherwise, I'll expose everything. I'll tell the whole world that Xingman Technology's foundation was stolen. You, Guyen, plagiarized your wife's inspiration. Let's see if you can still sit in that position. Let's see if you can continue this charade. After she finished yelling, her chest heaved violently as she gripped her phone tightly, awaiting the reaction from the other end. She could imagine Guyen's shock, even panic. At that moment, this was her last weapon, the most deeply buried and confidently held poisonous thorn. She didn't believe Guyen didn't care. If Xingman's foundation were shaken, he would be doomed. A long silence fell on the other end of the phone. Only the crackling of the static could be heard, like a venomous snake flicking its tongue. Just as Lin Mange thought Guyen was completely stunned, and a twisted smile was about to appear on her lips, Guyen's voice came through. It was no longer calm, but carried a clear, undisguised mockery. Oh, a soft laugh, transmitted through the receiver. pierced Lin Mange's eardrum like an icicle. Lin Mange, is this the trump card you kept hidden until the very end? The one you thought you could use to blackmail me? Guyan's voice was filled with a sense of absurdity. That rainy night, my study window wasn't closed properly, and you were eavesdropping outside the door. Did you think I didn't know? Those notes you unintentionally slipped and were illogical, riddled with errors, and I threw them into the shredder that very night. As for that love letter, he paused, seemingly recalling something, his tone carrying a cruel sense of amusement. Those pretentious romantic phrases, I knew long ago that you'd cobbled together technical jargon. The reason I didn't expose you and even treasured it was simply to see if you'd one day jump out on your own, clinging to this pitiful contribution as a lifeline. Lin Mange's smile froze, her blood seemingly standing on end. You knew all along. I know more than you think. Guyan's voice turned cold. I know you overheard me and then went to brag to your brother, saying you had something on me. I know you tried to use this secret to bargain with me several times afterward, but I calmly turned the tables on you each time. Lin Mange, your little scheme has been under my nose since the moment you started keeping it a secret. I've kept it like a caged mouse, waiting to see when it will squeak and bite someone. No, impossible, Lin Mange murmured to herself, her whole body turning ice cold. That, the nascent form of the apocalypse. The core algorithm of Apocalypse had already completed its first round of verification in the lab 3 days after I heard my mentor mention that vague concept. Your little bit of research isn't even scratching the surface. It'll only lead people astray. Guyan ruthlessly shattered her last illusion. As for the ownership of intellectual property rights, you seem to have forgotten that our prenuptial agreement clearly stipulates that any inventions or creations made by one party during the marriage using the material and technical resources, business information, etc., provided by the other party, belong to the other party. Moreover, your so-called contribution is completely fictitious. However, Guyan's tone shifted, taking on a final, judgmental tone. I've recorded your entire phone call today, including your attempt to blackmail and defame the company's founder using non-existent intellectual property rights. This adds new evidence to the indictment regarding your malicious damage to the company's reputation. Thank you, Lin Mange, for personally completing this final piece of the puzzle for me. Beep, beep, beep. The call ended. The tolling was like a death knell, striking Lin Mange's eardrums and shattering her last shred of hope. She slumped in her chair, her phone slipping from her hand. Attorney Chun, who had somehow already stood up, opened the sealed folder, took out a printed document, spread it out on the table, and pushed it toward her. Ms. Lin, Mr. Guyan asked me to give this to you. Attorney Chin's voice was completely flat. These were photocopies of the original records from Mr. Guyan's lab that rainy night, and a complete transcript of his conversation with his mentor. Compare it to your so-called line of reasoning. The truth is obvious. Also, this is a screenshot of your profile taken by the security camera outside the study window that night when you were eavesdropping. Mr. Guyan asked me to tell you, your trump card, from the very beginning, was a pawn I discarded on my chessboard. Now, the game is completely over. Lin Mange's gaze was fixed on the document. The original, clear handwritten formulas and rigorous logical deductions formed a stark contrast to her own flawed compilation. The blurry yet recognizable profile screenshot was like a slap across her face. It turned out that her self-righteous wisdom and self-assured control were utterly laughable, despicable, and insignificant in the face of Guyan's carefully laid plans. She thought she was the oriole unaware of the mantis's gaze. But little did she know, she had always been the cicada being watched by the mantis, while Guyan was the eagle already perched at the highest point. Every thought, every action, even her current frantic counterattack, was within Guyan's expectations. He was like watching a play whose ending he already knew, patiently watching her perform until she tore off the last veil of modesty, revealing her most shameful inner self. Despair, like icy seawater, crept up from her feet, instantly engulfing her. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Only tears mixed with saliva dripped uncontrollably from her chin. She watched as Attorney Chun calmly packed up the documents, watched him turn and walk towards the door, and listened to the click of the lock clicking shut. The room fell silent again. Only her heavy, bellows-like breathing remained. She slowly lowered her head and saw her hands resting on the table. Those hands, once adorned with bright red nail polish and sparkling diamond rings, once commanding respect and exuding confidence. Now, the nails were split, dirt embedded in the crevices, the skin loose, and the veins prominent. She slowly curled up, burying her face in her knees. There were no sobs, only an uncontrollable, violent tremor in her shoulders. It wasn't from fear, nor from sadness, but from a bone-chilling sense of absurdity and self-loathing that permeated her very soul. Her life was like a grand illusion. She thought she was the protagonist, the manipulator, only to discover in the end that she was merely a clown in someone else's script. A laughable, negative character used to highlight the protagonist's brilliance and prowess. Gu Yan. He didn't hit her, nor did he curse her. He simply peeled back her layers of pretense with the utmost calmness, revealing to her how foolish, greedy, and despicable she was. This kind of mental torture was more unbearable than any physical pain. She finally understood that from the moment she decided to extend her greedy hand towards Xingman and Gu Yan, her fate was sealed, and the venomous fangs she intended to use in retaliation had already had their venom sacs crushed by Gu Yan at the very beginning of their development. Outside the window, the sky was gradually brightening. A sliver of grayish-white light squeezed through the cracks in the wooden planks, illuminating her feet and reflecting the dust motes dancing in the air. A new day had begun, but for Lin Mange, it was the last glimmer of light before the eternal night descended. She huddled in the dark corner, like a moth with its wings completely broken, stripped of even the courage and right to fly towards the flame. Attorney Chen's footsteps sounded again outside the door, this time accompanied by the sound of a key turning. The door was pushed open, and light flooded in, stinging Lin Mange's eyes. She instinctively raised her hand to shield her eyes, but then heard Attorney Chen's businesslike voice. "Ms. Lin, it's time. Please come with us. Mr. Gu Yan is holding a global live-streamed press conference. He says, you should see for yourself what the ending will be like." Press conference? Lin Mange trembled as she lowered her hand from her hiding place. Gu Yan wanted her to witness firsthand at the globally televised press conference, to see her nailed to the pillar of shame, to see her laughable trump card exposed and made a laughingstock of the world. Two men lifted her up and dragged her towards the door. The light was blinding, making it almost impossible for her to see, but she could sense that ahead lay a massive vortex, waiting to devour her. And the man who had created it all stood at the center of the vortex, calmly awaiting her arrival as the final, and most insignificant, sacrifice on his altar of victory. She opened her mouth, as if to scream, but no sound came out. Only silent tears streamed down her face. The vehicle had no windows. Only a single scarlet light bulb illuminated the metal cargo area, casting a flickering, blood-red shadow with the engine's vibrations. Lin Mange was held on either side of two silent women, her wrists gripped as if by iron clamps, unable to move. The air was thick with the pungent smell of stale tobacco mixed with cheap cleaning agents. Each breath felt like swallowing grit. She didn't know how long the car had been driving. Time seemed to stretch out like thick syrup in the confined space. Attorney Chen's words, "See the ending for yourself," echoed in her ears like a curse. A press conference? A global live broadcast? Was Gu Yan going to strip her of her last shred of dignity in front of millions of strangers? Finally, the car stopped. The hatch opened, and a blinding white light flooded in. Lin Mange instinctively squeezed her eyes shut, tears welling up in her eyes. She was roughly pulled out of the car, her feet stumbling as they landed on the cold, hard ground. The cacophony of voices, the hum of equipment, and a low, persistent electrical hum surged in from all directions, assaulting her fragile eardrums. When she finally managed to open her tear-blurred eyes, the sight before her made her instantly breathless. This was a massive studio. No, more like a temporary, industrially styled launch event. Beneath the towering dome hung several ultra-high-definition LED screens, displaying Xingman Technology's remarkable achievements over the years, the iterative development of the Apocalypse system, the expansion of its global market share, and showcases of various cutting-edge awards. However, in stark contrast was the solitary interrogation chair in the center of the stage. Facing countless cameras, the chair was made of cold metal, with the faint reflections of restraint strap buckles on the armrests, and she was being escorted, step by step, toward that chair. Below the stage was a sea of people. Layers upon layers of camera lenses like countless prying eyes. Flashes of light rising and falling, each one like a silent slap in the face. She could feel thousands of eyes focused on her. Curiosity, disdain, anger, schadenfreude. Those faces that had once fawned over her were now perhaps watching this farce indifferently from some corner of the audience. She tried to struggle, to scream, to cover her face, but her arms were firmly restrained, and her throat felt like it was stuffed with cotton, only able to make hoarse, broken bellows-like sounds. She was forced to sit on that cold metal chair, the restraints snapping shut around her waist and wrists. The icy touch seeped through her thin clothing into her skin, reaching her very bones. Just then, the lift on one side of the stage slowly rose up. Nguyen appeared at the center of the beam of light. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit, his face calm, his eyes deep, creating an eerie harmony with the judgmental atmosphere of the scene. He didn't look at Lin Mange, but instead nodded slightly to the audience and the cameras, his demeanor as composed as if this were just an ordinary financial report meeting. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, friends from the media, and viewers watching the global live stream. Nguyen's voice, amplified by top-of-the-line sound equipment, resonated throughout the venue, clear, steady, and utterly calm. Thank you all for being here, or for watching on your screens. Today, I'm holding this press conference not for new products, not for strategy, but simply to clarify some facts and to put an end to a series of rumors and misunderstandings surrounding Shingmon Technology and myself recently. His gaze finally shifted slowly to Lin Mange, who was strapped to the chair. There was no hatred, no anger, not even a trace of emotion in his eyes, like a surgeon examining a lesion that needed to be removed. Under his gaze, Lin Mange trembled uncontrollably, her teeth chattering. She tried to avoid his gaze, but found her head pinned to the spot by some invisible force. First, regarding Ms. Lin Mange, Nguyen spoke directly, addressing her by name, her voice as calm as if she were reading an experimental report. She had previously claimed that the original algorithm concept for Shingmon Technology's core product, the Apocalypse system, originated from her own contributions, implying that I had plagiarized. To set the record straight, we are now releasing a set of evidence. He gently raised his hand, and the largest main screen behind him switched images. On the left was a transcript of Lin Mange's hysterical phone call from the previous night in the cell, with key parts highlighted in red. On the right was a high-resolution scan of Nguyen's original handwritten notes from that time, with dates, derivations, and verification data clearly visible. Immediately following, a clear audio recording played, the voice of the young Nguyen discussing academic issues with his mentor, his logic meticulous, far superior to Lin Mange's flawed compilation. Everyone can compare them. Nguyen's voice rang out at the opportune moment, stating that the so-called source of inspiration, chronologically later than the original record, contains a fundamental logical fallacy. Ms. Lin Mange's attempt to use this to blackmail and spread false information constitutes a serious infringement on Shingmon Technology's reputation. A low murmur rippled through the audience. The flashes from the cameras intensified. Lin Mange could clearly hear the snickers of those around her, the contempt born of seeing through her lies. She was filled with shame and indignation, wanting to argue, but the restraints bound her, rendering her immobile. She could only futilely twist her body, uttering muffled sobs. Nguyen seemed completely unconcerned by her reaction and continued to press on. Secondly, regarding Ms. Lin Mange's conduct during her tenure as CEO and previously as the chairman's wife, a 6-month independent investigation by a reputable third-party auditing firm has uncovered a series of actions that seriously violate business ethics and may involve legal risks. The screen then switched again, displaying a well-organized flowchart and a table showing the flow of funds. First, by fabricating consulting projects, he transferred company funds to shell companies overseas under his personal control, totaling 470 million yuan. Second, taking advantage of his position, he purchased substandard raw materials from Lin's Industrial, controlled by his elder brother Lin Feng, at prices significantly higher than the market price, causing the company direct economic losses of over 200 million yuan, and also receiving huge kickbacks. Third, Suspected commercial espionage. It has been verified that Ms. Lin Mange had a long-term improper relationship with Zhao Tianyu, a senior executive of our competitor Yunchuang Technology, and leaked test data and core security protocols of our company's upgraded Tianqi system to him through encrypted channels. Each accusation was accompanied by corresponding screenshots of evidence, email records, and bank statement snippets. Those transactions she thought were flawless, those documents she thought she had destroyed, were now laid bare on the big screen. Starkly clear. The uproar from the audience grew louder, and some even began pointing and whispering. Lin Mange felt all the blood rush to her head, then instantly drain away, leaving only a cold numbness. The secret she thought she knew was so easily shattered by Gu Yan's scheme. She felt like a clown stripped naked, dissected piece by piece before millions of viewers, her inner filth exposed. Finally, there was the issue of Ms. Lin Mange's personal conduct and family ethics. Gu Yan paused slightly, seemingly choosing his words, but his cold objectivity remained unchanged. A point of considerable public concern. The screen switched to a screenshot from a hospital corridor security camera. Although faces were blurred, physical features and key time points were clearly identifiable. Next, a DNA test report's conclusion page appeared, with the words excluded starkly displayed like a red-hot iron, searing Lin Mange's retina. It has been verified that the baby boy born to Ms. Lin Mange on October 7th of last year has no biological parentage with either her or me. There is evidence suggesting that the baby boy is her child with Zhao Tianyu, the aforementioned executive of Yunchuang Technology. Ms. Lin Mange is suspected of intentionally switching the babies while in the hospital, attempting to obfuscate the bloodline and gain illicit benefits. Boom. Lin Mange felt her mind go blank. All sound vanished, leaving only the roar of blood surging in her temples. Switching babies. Even this veil of pretense had been ripped away by Gu Yan himself. She instinctively wanted to curl up, to disappear, but the cold restraints held her firmly in place. She could feel countless gazes piercing her like needles, gazes filled with contempt, disgust, and amusement at the spectacle. Just then, the screen suddenly switched to a live feed. On the screen appeared Zhao Tianyu. He looked haggard, his eyes sunken, and in a similar interrogation setting. He spoke rapidly to the camera. Lin Mange contacted me first. She said the child's situation could be handled. I gave her the money. She also provided the data. It was all her idea. I wanted a reduced sentence. I'll confess everything. His voice amplified through the loudspeakers, each word like a whip lashing at Lin Mange's face. Immediately afterwards, the screen switched to Lin Feng. His chubby cheeks were sunken. His eyes were unfocused, and he mechanically recited in front of the camera, "My sister Lin Mange made me raise the price. The money was transferred overseas. She took the lion's share. The villa was transferred to my name by her. I didn't know it was embezzled money." Brothers turned against each other. Lovers turned against each other. All under Gu Yan's arrangement. In the most public and cruel way. Lin Mange finally broke down. She jerked her head back, facing the camera, and let out a scream that sounded inhuman. "No. Gu Yan, you framed me. You planned this all along. You're a devil. You'll die a horrible death." Her voice was hoarse and broken, filled with resentment and despair. The scream, transmitted via the live stream, reached every corner of the internet. The chat exploded instantly, filled with words like "crazy woman," "serves her right," and "severely punish her." Gu Yan waited quietly until her screams subsided before speaking slowly, his voice still steady but carrying a chilling, definitive tone. Ms. Lin Mange's emotions seemed to confirm the veracity of the investigation results. On behalf of Xingmon Technology, I hereby solemnly declare the company has officially filed a lawsuit with the relevant authorities, accusing Ms. Lin Mange of multiple crimes including embezzlement, commercial bribery, infringement of trade secrets, forgery, and fraud. Furthermore, regarding her illegitimate child with Zhao Tianyu, her custody rights and potential criminal liability will be determined by law. Xingmon Technology is completely severing ties with this matter. He turned around, looking directly into the camera for the first time, his gaze seemingly piercing through the screen and reaching the hearts of every viewer. Today's press conference is not to vent personal emotions, but to uphold the bottom line of business and the value of integrity. Xingmon Technology's development relies on the efforts and innovation of all its employees, not on any individual's selfish desires or conspiracies. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. The truth will eventually come to light. After speaking, he bowed slightly, then turned and, without glancing once more at the woman on the stage who was still struggling in vain, tears streaming down her face, walked away calmly under the spotlight. He left behind the woman nailed to the pillar of shame, along with all her sins and madness, leaving behind countless scrutinizing gazes and merciless judgment. The live stream signal wasn't cut off, and the camera remained focused on Lin Mange. Like an ugly statue, she was fixed to the chair, utterly collapsing amidst the countless flashes of light. Her mouth was open, but she couldn't utter a complete syllable. Only saliva dripped uncontrollably from the corners of her mouth. Those eyes, once filled with calculation and arrogance, now held only empty despair and madness. Attorney Chen stepped onto the stage and calmly announced to the camera, "The press conference is over. Ms. Lin Mange will be immediately handed over to the relevant authorities for legal processing. Thank you for your attention." The staff began removing the equipment, and the crowd gradually dispersed. In the vast studio, only Lin Mange remained, left all alone under the bright lights in the center of the stage. That light, scorching and blinding, like the flames of judgment, burned away even the last vestiges of her presence. She knew that from this moment on, the name Lin Mange would forever be linked with words like greed, betrayal, and scandal, nailed to the memory of the internet, becoming an object of public scorn. Gu Yan, the man who had personally pushed her into the abyss, had cleanly and decisively withdrawn, his back straight and upright, as if he had merely brushed away a speck of dust. This trial, broadcast live across the entire internet, was a carefully orchestrated farewell performance for her, and she could only follow the script he had written, performing this final and most pathetic scene. She slowly closed her eyes, two streams of tears sliding down her cheeks. The world fell completely silent, leaving only boundless darkness and the cold pronouncement that echoed endlessly in her mind. The game was over. The sound of the iron gate closing behind them didn't sound like the clanging of metal. It sounded more like a muffled sigh, completely severing the connection between the two worlds. Lin Mange stood in a narrow concrete passageway, a low-wattage incandescent light overhead casting a long, distorted shadow on the moldy wall. The air was thick with the stench of disinfectant, mildew, and some indescribable sour, rotten smell, making her throat itch. The silk nightgown she wore, stained with porridge and tears, which she had taken from the villa, now seemed so ridiculous and out of place, like the last colorful but dirty feather on a clown's body. No one escorted her. Attorney Chen left a message outside the iron gate. "Go on your own. Someone will meet you at the end." He then turned and left, his footsteps fading into the distance until they disappeared behind the heavy iron gate. This feeling of being abandoned was more unsettling than any guard. She dragged her leaden legs, slowly moving forward. Her high heels had been removed the night before. Her bare feet trod on the cold, rough cement floor. The fine sand and unknown grime stung her soles, but it was nothing compared to the anguish in her heart. The iron gates on either side of the passage were tightly shut. Occasionally, a suppressed cough or a nightmarish murmur would drift from behind one of the gates, adding to the eeriness of the place. At the end of the passage was an open iron gate. Outside the gate was a small courtyard with uneven, muddy ground, and a few half-dead, withered grasses shivered in the cold wind. Two middle-aged women, dressed in bulky gray cotton-padded coats and expressionless, looked at her as if she were a lifeless piece of merchandise. Lin Mange, one of the women, with a hoarse voice, flipped through a crumpled piece of paper in her hand. Checking it, Lin Mange instinctively wanted to nod, but then froze. The name sounded so jarring now, like a whip with barbs. "Follow me." Another woman gave a brief command, then turned and walked away. She was led into an even more dilapidated building, climbed a creaky wooden staircase, and arrived at a large, dormitory-style room. The room contained a dozen or so bunk beds covered with blackened mattresses, and the air was thick with the stench of sweat and body odor. Several women, also dressed in gray cotton-padded coats, were sitting or lying down when they saw her enter. Their gazes all turned to her, filled with scrutiny, curiosity, and undisguised malice. She changed her clothes. The woman with the hoarse voice threw her a matching gray cotton-padded jacket and a pair of worn-out cloth shoes. She took off all the tattered clothes she was wearing, and her hair was cut. Lin Mange stood frozen, clutching the pile of rough, pungent clothes. A haircut? To take off this. This was her last connection to the past. Even if it was dirty and tattered, it was still silk, a designer brand. Are you deaf? Another woman stepped forward, her breath reeking of bad breath in her face. Newbie, behave yourself. Hurry up. Don't waste time. The women nearby let out low snickers. Humiliation surged through her like a tide. But looking into the other person's fierce eyes and the hostile gazes around her, Lin Mange bit her lip, trembling, and began to unbutton her pajamas. The feeling of the silk fabric gliding against her skin, once so pleasant, now felt like peeling off a layer of skin. She took it off, as if shedding a false shell, revealing a pale, loose body covered in bruises and scratches. A chill instantly enveloped her. She hastily threw on a gray cotton-padded jacket. The rough fabric rubbed against her skin, causing a persistent itch. Then came her shoes, cloth shoes that were too big for her, the soles so thin she could feel every pebble on the ground. Finally, it was time for her hair. A woman, holding a large, rusty pair of scissors, walked up to her without any hesitation. Lin Mange instinctively covered her head. No, don't cut. Do you think you can have your way? The woman roughly pulled her hand away, the scissors snipping away. Strands of her once meticulously cared for and proud long hair fell to the muddy ground, quickly swallowed by the grime. She looked at the unfamiliar woman in the mirror. Her hair was cut haphazardly, like wildly growing weeds. Her face was ashen, her eyes sunken. She wore a dowdy gray cotton-padded jacket, her gaze empty and terrified. Was this still Lin Mange? This was nothing more than a soulless, lowly shadow. What followed was a long and endless ordeal. She was assigned the heaviest work, washing mountains of dirty clothes. The soap was extremely alkaline, and after a few days, her once delicate hands became rough, cracked, and covered with cuts, cleaning the stinking public toilets, squatting on the ground, scrubbing urine stains and yellow stains with a steel wool pad, her stomach churning. But she dared not vomit, for if she was even slightly slow, she would be scolded or even shoved, picking vegetables and peeling potatoes in the cold kitchen, her fingers frozen red and numb. The food consisted of bland vegetable soup and hard cornbread. Occasionally, a few specks of oil could be seen in the soup, which was considered a feast. She used to be picky about the plating and seasoning of Michelin-starred restaurants. But now, in order to get a slightly softer cornbread, she had to push and shove with other equally hungry women, only to be met with more glares and curses. Sleep was fragmented. On the communal bed, the people around her ground their teeth, talked in their sleep, and snored loudly. Some even got up and paced around in the middle of the night, the iron bed creaking. She huddled in the darkened mattress, itchy all over, unsure whether it was the lice in the blankets or the psychological aversion that kept her awake all night. When she closed her eyes, all she saw were Guyan's cold eyes, the millions of mocking gazes in the live stream, the ugly faces of Zhao Tianyu and Lin Feng turning against each other, and the child who had been taken away, whose fate was unknown. What was most unbearable were her roommates. They quickly found out her background, the once glorious former CEO who had fallen to such a state. Curiosity turned into wanton humiliation. They would deliberately splash dirty water on her while she was washing dishes, hide her shoes while she slept, and gossip about her figure, her face, and her well-known scandals in the most vulgar language. Hey, I heard she used to spend tens of thousands on a single meal. Now she's begging for a steamed bun like a grandson. That's right, they even swapped children, but they ended up with a bastard. Haha, what are you pretending to be so high and mighty for? Who knows how you used to serve men in bed? These words were like poison needles, relentlessly pricking her fragile nerves day and night. She wanted to argue, to scream, to tell them who she used to be. But when she opened her mouth, only hoarse gasps escaped, only to be met with more unrestrained laughter. Here, she was no longer Lin Mange, but merely a number, a source of amusement, a worthless person banished to the mortal realm for breaking heavenly rules. She tried a hunger strike as a final protest, but on the third day, her stomach cramped so badly it felt like a hand was churning inside, and her vision blurred. Finally, under a disdainful gaze, she wolfed down the soup and cornbread offered to her, choking and tears streaming down her face. The instinct for survival made her yield, a yielding that was more devastating to her will than physical pain. Occasionally, someone in uniform would come to talk to her. The conversation was invariably about whether she pleaded guilty and showed remorse. She would nod mechanically, reciting memorized phrases like "I was wrong" and "I confess." The person would write it down and leave, as if she were just a machine that needed periodic calibration. Time became blurred under this inhuman torture. She didn't know what day it was, what day of the week it was, only able to tell day from night by the faint changes in the light outside the window. Her schedule, once accurate to the minute, was now filled with endless labor, humiliation, and numb sleep. She felt herself rotting rapidly, from the inside out, like the few withered grasses in the yard, slowly losing moisture and vitality. Just when she thought she would rot away silently. One evening, the woman with the hoarse voice came to her and threw her a set of neatly folded clothes, which were also gray but made of a different material, and a pair of half-new cloth shoes. "Change it. Someone will see you." "See her? Who? Guyen? What more does he want? To see her groveling like a dog?" Trembling, she changed her clothes and was led out of the nightmarish dormitory, through several, even darker corridors, to a small meeting room with only a table and 2 chairs. The room had no windows, only a dim, yellowish light overhead. Sitting opposite her at the table was not Guyen, but Attorney Chun. Attorney Chin was still impeccably dressed in a suit, which seemed out of place in the simple environment. In front of him was a flat craft paper file box. Lin Mange was forced to sit down in a chair. She instinctively curled up, a habit she had developed recently, to minimize her presence and reduce the possibility of being attacked. "Lin Mange," Attorney Chin spoke, his voice still as steady as ever. "Mr. Guyen asked me to come and see you. Also, there are some things I need to give you." He pushed the file box towards him. Lin Mange eyed the box warily, not touching it. What was inside? A verdict? Or more evidence? "Open it up," Attorney Chin said. "You'll have to face this sooner or later." She hesitated for a long time before reaching out with trembling hands to lift the lid of the box. Inside, there were no documents, only a white envelope and a dark blue, thick-looking bank book. She picked up the envelope first. It was light, sealed with a bright red stamp. She pulled out the document inside. The first page was a photocopy of a medical record. The date was 5 years ago, shortly after she married Guyen, due to an unplanned pregnancy, fearing it would affect her figure and career, and even more so, that the child would become leverage for Guyen to control her. She secretly contacted a hospital and had an abortion behind Guyen's back. The record was clear, and the signature was her own. Her fingers trembled violently, almost dropping the paper. She thought she had covered her tracks perfectly. How could Guyen have known? She turned to the second page, which was a trust fund establishment document. Settler, Guyen. Beneficiary, Lin Mange. The trust assets were substantial, but a line of small print in the remarks section burned her eyes like a red-hot iron. This trust is established to commemorate the settler's eldest son, who tragically passed away on date. The beneficiary may only receive a basic living allowance monthly, subject to adherence to specific behavioral guidelines. Until death. Eldest son. Date. X year. X month. X day. The very day she miscarried. Lin Mange was struck dumb, her entire body frozen in her chair. Blood rushed to her head, then instantly receded, leaving only a cold, numb feeling. Guyen knew. He had always known. The child she had so easily abandoned was actually a boy, the eldest son of the Gu family. She looked up abruptly at Attorney Chun, her eyes filled with disbelief, horror, and a deep-seated fear. Meeting her gaze, Attorney Chin calmly stated, as if reading a dry report, "Mr. Guyen has always known about your first pregnancy and your unauthorized abortion. The child was indeed a boy, and developing well. Mr. Guyen established this trust fund for this. He used this fund to buy you peace for the rest of your life." He paused, his gaze unwavering. "As long as you stay where you are, don't cause trouble, don't appeal, and don't try to contact the outside world, this money will be enough for you to buy the most basic food and clothing each month, maintaining a minimum standard of survival. Until your death." He picked up the dark blue savings book, opened it, and pointed to the small balance and regular deposit records. This is your living expenses. It comes from your eldest son, whom you've never met. Mr. Goose said, this is what you deserve. Supporting you. The mother who strangled him. In your eldest son's name for the rest of your life. This is a kind of compassion. Mercy. Lynn Mange stared intently at the bank book. At the cold, hard numbers. At the words eldest son on the trust document. A profound sense of absurdity and a shame more painful than death overwhelmed her like a tidal wave. She thought Guyan's revenge was to destroy her reputation, seize her assets, and ruin her life. She thought that was the end. She was wrong. This is the cruelest punishment. Not to kill her, but to keep her alive. Using the money from the child she killed with her own hands to sustain her lowly, filthy, and shameful life. Every day, every penny reminds her that she once possessed a life that Guyan cherished, and that she herself had strangled it. Now, the continuation of that life has become her only means of survival, and also her eternal shackles and pillar of shame. Her mouth was open, and a hoarse, leaky sound came from her throat, like a broken bellows. But she couldn't even string together a complete sentence. Tears didn't flow, they welled up, murky and scalding, instantly covering her filthy face. She wanted to scream, to tear the document to shreds, to smash the box, but her body felt as if all the bones had been removed, leaving her only to tremble violently, like the last withered leaf in the autumn wind. Attorney Chin watched her break down indifferently, and only continued after she had calmed down a bit. Mr. Guyan asked me to tell you one last thing. Lynn Mange. This is what you owe him. Use the rest of your life to slowly repay him. After speaking, Attorney Chin stood up, straightened his suit, and without giving her another glance, turned and left the meeting room. The door clicked shut, locking her back into the small space. Lynn Mange slumped in her chair, still clutching the file box tightly in her arms as if it were a tombstone that could crush her at any moment. She looked down at the dark blue savings book, at the words eldest son on the trust document, and suddenly let out a dissonant, piercing wail. The sound didn't seem human. It was more like the mournful cry of a wounded mother beast on its deathbed, filled with regret, despair, and a utter, collapsing madness. She finally understood that what Guyan gave her was never an end, but a new, longer, and more painful sentence. During this sentence, she would face not prison guards or fellow inmates every day, but the bitter fruit of her own actions and the sins she could never repay to the eldest son she had never met. She curled up in the cold chair, burying her face in the file box, her sobs gradually turning into silent convulsions. The world fell completely silent, leaving only boundless darkness and that eternal prison, tailor-made for her in the name of her eldest son. Guyan, in the gentlest way, delivered her the most fatal blow, and this blow would haunt her for the rest of her life. In late autumn, the sycamore leaves have all fallen, leaving only the gnarled branches pointing towards the gray sky. On the top floor of Shingmon Technology's headquarters building, floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking panoramic view, seemingly unobstructed. Guyan stood by the window, a cup of unsweetened black coffee in his hand, calmly gazing down at the steel jungle below. 2 full years had passed since that global live-streamed launch event that had caused a sensation throughout the city and even overseas. In the past 2 years, Shingmon Technology has achieved a textbook-perfect turnaround. After clearing up the scandal, the core team, led by Guyan, cut all redundant businesses and focused on the underlying iteration of the Tianqi system, launching the revolutionary 4.0 version and securing multiple national-level infrastructure contracts in Europe, America, and Southeast Asia. The stock price not only recovered its losses, but also reached a new historical high. Guyan's personal wealth and prestige also soared to unprecedented heights. But there was little trace of pride on his face. That turmoil seemed to have worn away the last vestige of softness in his character, leaving only a cold, hard rationality and an almost harsh calmness. He no longer trusted anyone easily, including his deputies. All decision-making processes became more rigorous, with core steps requiring his personal review. Trust became the most expensive luxury in his dictionary, a consumable he would never easily give up. Assistant Lin Xiao walked in quietly, her footsteps absorbed by the thick carpet. She held a freshly printed document in her hand and stopped 3 steps behind Gu Yan, maintaining the safe distance that had been repeatedly emphasized to her on her first day at the company. "Mr. Gu, this is the final ruling just delivered by the court." Lin Zhao's voice was soft and respectful. Lin Mange repeatedly violated management regulations inside, including attempting to storm the monitoring room, passing notes to visitors, and intentionally damaging public property during group work. Based on relevant regulations, and considering her previous sentence, the final ruling adds 18 months to her sentence. Furthermore, her appeals regarding the trust fund and the assets under her eldest son's name were rejected in court, upholding the original verdict. Guyan didn't turn around, but simply hummed softly and took a sip of his slightly cool coffee. The bitterness spread across his tongue, a taste he was already used to. Lin Mange. This name is now as distant as a nightmare from another world to him. The woman who used to chatter incessantly in his ear, calculating every penny of his assets. The woman who tried to usurp the Gu family bloodline with her bastard child, is now just a cold number in his file and the monthly living expenses that require his signature to be paid. Extended sentence? As expected, that woman, like a caged beast, even with her claws pulled out and her locked in a cage, couldn't shake her instinct to bite. She probably wanted to get his attention this way, or fantasized that he would soften. Unfortunately, she didn't understand that from the moment she signed that DNA report confirmation, she was already completely dead in Guyan's world. As for that trust fund, Guyan's gaze faltered slightly for a moment. It was indeed something he had set up for his eldest son, whom he had never met. That child was innocent, the continuation of his bloodline. Yet he had died because of Lin Mange's greed and malice. Using that money to support Lin Mange was not compassion, but the ultimate mockery. It meant making her live every day in guilt and shame, letting her know that every breath she took, every bite she ate, was bought in the name of the son she had strangled with her own hands. This was 1,000 times more painful than killing her. Follow the procedures and allocate funds on time. Guyan's voice broke the silence in the room, devoid of any emotion. In addition, notify the legal department that if she makes any more unreasonable complaints like this, they will not be accepted and will be treated as disturbances. Yes, Mr. Gu. Lin Xiao quickly took notes, a chill creeping into her heart as she looked at the former mistress of the house she had never met. Mr. Gu's ruthlessness far exceeded her imagination. This was not merely the expulsion of an enemy, but a thorough and insidious form of spiritual torture. Furthermore, Gu Yan turned around and his gaze fell on another document in Lin Zhao's hand. What about the reply from Switzerland? It's been confirmed that the young master is doing very well at the international school in Zurich, adapting very well, and the psychological evaluation report is also very positive. The care team said he rarely mentions the past. Lin Xiao answered cautiously, mentioning that child. The icy resolve in Gu Yan's eyes seemed to melt for a moment, a fleeting, almost imperceptible tenderness crossing his face. That was the true bloodline of the Gu family, a treasure he had obtained in exchange for that impostor. Back then, to cover up the fact that the child had been switched, Lin Mange had placed the real child in the care of an inconspicuous nanny in the suburbs. If Gu Yan hadn't been prepared and hadn't left a backup plan with the nanny, that child would probably have already been killed by Lin Mange and Zhao Tianyu to prevent future trouble. Now, the child is in a completely unfamiliar environment, receiving the best education and protection, far removed from the bloodshed here. He doesn't need to know who Lin Mange is, nor does he need to know who Zhao Tianyu is. He only needs to know that he is Gu Yan's son, and that's enough. Gu Yan will clear all obstacles for him, including his nominal mother, Lin Mange. Very good. Gu Yan nodded, walked back to his large desk, sat down, and sent me the schedule for next week, especially the merger and acquisition meeting with the European side, allocating double the time. Understood. Lin Xiao placed the documents on the table, about to leave, but hesitated for a moment. Mr. Gu, regarding the year-end charity gala, the organizers hope you can bring your partner. If you don't have a suitable candidate, the public relations department can recommend a few. Gu Yan raised his hand to interrupt her, his eyes indifferent. No need. I'm single, or I can bring Xiao Xiao. This kind of occasion doesn't require unnecessary decorations. Yes, I understand. Lin Xiao blushed and quickly retreated. Silence returned to the office. Gu Yan's gaze returned to the window. The city's traffic flowed like a series of flowing galaxies, bustling and noisy, yet separated from him by a cold pane of glass. He had won. Won completely. Won wealth. Won status. Won the thrill of revenge. But he knew some things would never come back. Like that rainy night, when he had genuinely wanted to spend his life with Gu Yan, like his unborn eldest son, like the most basic trust between people. He picked up a small photo frame on the table. Inside wasn't a picture of Lin Mange, but a photo of a child's back as he ran across the lawn, sunlight streaming down his small shoulders. It was one of the photos sent by the care team. He looked at it for a few seconds, then gently closed the photo frame and locked it in the deepest part of the drawer. That child was the only warmth in his cold game of chess, and also his only weakness. But he would protect this weakness with even more stringent measures than he would protect Xingmon technology. As for Lin Mange, she was already a piece on the chessboard, captured and swept into the trash heap, no longer even worthy of being mentioned. He pressed the intercom. Connect to the encrypted line in Switzerland. I want to hear my child's voice. The call connected, and a child's innocent yet fluent English greeting came through. Gu Yan's tightly pressed lips finally relaxed into a barely perceptible smile. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, inside those high walls, Lin Mange huddled in the cold, damp corner, clutching her well-worn savings book tightly to her chest. The notice of the extended sentence had arrived, 18 months. This meant that much of her youth, and the remaining years of her life, would be wasted in this dark and gloomy place. What made her even more desperate was that she had just tried to use her meager living expenses to exchange for a pen and paper to write another appeal letter, but was ruthlessly refused. The manager coldly told her that, according to the new regulations, all her personal belongings, including this bank book, would be kept by a designated person, and she could only receive the basic rations as stipulated. In other words, even her last, faint connection with her eldest son was severed. She was even deprived of the right to experience this humiliation. Listening to the howling wind outside the window, she felt like a fallen leaf in the wind, already withered, yet unwilling to fall, enduring excruciating pain in endless drifting. Gu Yan's name was like a curse, etched deep into her soul. She knew she could never escape it in this lifetime. Even after she died, the trust fund might continue to exist in her eldest son's name, like an eternal joke, mocking her absurd, greedy, and ultimately destitute life. She buried her face in her knees and let out a barely audible sob, which was quickly swallowed by the wind. Gu Yan hung up the phone, his gentle expression vanishing instantly. He opened the detailed plan for the European acquisition on the table, his gaze sharp as a hawk. The old chapter was over. Both Lin Mange and that unbearable past were sealed away in the tomb of time. Now, a new game begins. The opponents are stronger, the board is larger, and the rules are more complex. But he is ready. He is no longer the Gu Yan who would be heartbroken by the betrayal of his spouse. He is the absolute controller of Xingmon technology, a cool hunter in the capital market, and the player who can weave the web of destiny with his own hands. He picked up his pen and signed his name on the first page of the proposal. His strokes were sharp and forceful, penetrating the paper. Outside the window, dusk deepened, and the city lights began to twinkle. The neon lights of the city illuminated once more, outlining a bustling yet cold silhouette. Gu Yan's figure was reflected in the huge floor-to-ceiling window, overlapping with the myriad lights outside, appearing both real and detached. He stood there, like a solitary peak, silent and aloof, overlooking the commercial jungle below, which had just weathered a bloody storm and was now calm again. Deep within that jungle, the woman he had buried with his own hands was spending the rest of her life chewing on the poison he had prepared for her, a poison called regret. The game is over, but a new journey has just begun. This time, he will not give anyone the chance to hurt him, including himself.